The lawyer said 12 apartments, and Mara's sisters stopped pretending they weren't counting. Vanessa sat straighter. Corinne's thumb froze over the corner of her paper cup. They had spent the first 10 minutes of the meeting praising fairness, family, and Grandma Evelyn's desire to keep everyone close. Now the room went so quiet, Mara could hear the radiator ticking behind her. Then the lawyer cleared his throat. To my granddaughters, Vanessa Bennett Hale and Corinne Bennett, jointly, I leave the properties known as Calder Court and Linden Place, including all land, structures, leases, and related contents. Vanessa reached for Corinne's hand. It looked tender, unless you noticed how tightly she squeezed. And to my granddaughter Mara Bennett, I leave the property at 1843 Weller Street, subject to the existing tenancy of Arthur Bell. Corinne blinked. The little row house? Vanessa turned to Mara with an expression too careful to be sympathy. The one with the man still in it? Mara looked down at the signature on the copy in front of her. Evelyn Bennett, each letter shaky but recognizable. She had watched those hands weaken. She had buttoned those cardigans, trimmed those nails, warmed those fingers between her own at 3 a.m. 12 apartments for the sisters who visited. One leaking row house and its last tenant for the granddaughter who stayed. For one humiliating second, Mara wondered if Grandma had died angry with her. The attorney, Martin Keene, continued reading as though nobody's life had just been weighed on a postal scale. He was a narrow man with a silver mustache and a voice made for explaining deductibles. His office smelled of coffee, dust, and the lemon candy in the glass dish nobody had touched. Mara pressed her knee against the underside of the conference table until it hurt. "Does it say what the buildings are worth?" Vanessa asked. "Vanessa," Corinne murmured. "What? We need to know for tax purposes." Keene folded his hands. "Appraisals are being updated. The estate documents contain older valuations, but I would advise against relying on those." "And Weller Street?" Corinne asked. "Is that included in the appraisal?" "It is." Vanessa gave Mara a small smile. "See? It could be worth more than it looks." That was something Vanessa said when she wanted credit for comforting someone without the inconvenience of believing the comfort herself. Mara picked up her coffee. It had gone cold. She drank anyway. Keene worked through bank accounts, personal effects, and instructions for final expenses. Evelyn had not left much cash after the medical bills. There were modest amounts for a Baltimore animal shelter and the church whose services she had attended mainly for the music. Her dining table went to Corinne. Her pearl earrings went to Vanessa. Mara received Evelyn's sewing box and all family photographs not otherwise specifically designated. That almost made Vanessa object. Mara saw it gather behind her teeth. But Keene looked over his glasses and asked, "Any questions?" Vanessa had several. She wanted to know when she and Corinne could inspect the apartment records, whether leases could be changed immediately, and whether the estate would cover replacing the refrigerator in one of the units. Corinne took notes on the back of the funeral home envelope she had found in her purse. Mara had only one question, and she couldn't make herself ask it. Why him? She had met Arthur Bell twice, maybe 3 times. He was the unsmiling man who used to come by Grandma's place carrying a dented metal toolbox and smelling faintly of cedar shavings. Once, when Mara was 16, he had repaired a kitchen cabinet while Evelyn stood over him criticizing his hinges. He had told Evelyn that if she knew so much, she could get down on the floor herself. Evelyn had laughed for the rest of the afternoon. That was almost 8 years ago. Mara didn't know his birthday, whether he had family, or why his name had appeared in Grandma's will, like an appliance that couldn't be removed. Keene slid 3 envelopes across the table. "Keys and property information. The Weller Street tenant's lease is in yours, Mara. Mr. Bell has been notified that ownership is transferring through the estate." "Notified how?" she asked. "Certified letter. So he knows?" "He should." Vanessa made a soft sound. "That's going to be awkward." Mara put the envelope in her bag. "Thank you, Vanessa." "I hadn't noticed." Corinne's head came up. Vanessa's smile thinned. Grief had made all 3 of them meaner, in strangely familiar ways. Corinne became helpless when she wanted to avoid choosing sides. Vanessa became efficient when she was afraid. Mara became quiet enough to make everyone else fill the silence, then hated them for what they put in it. Outside, February wind swept wrappers along Charles Street and got under the collar of Mara's black wool coat. The coat had belonged to Evelyn. It was too broad in the shoulders and still contained a peppermint fused to its paper wrapper in one pocket. Vanessa stood on the sidewalk tapping her phone. "We should all go somewhere. Have lunch. Talk about next steps. I have work at 2, Mara said. You're working today? I switched the morning shift for the meeting. At the hospital? No, Vanessa. At the aquarium. I've become a dolphin. Corinne laughed before catching herself. Vanessa did not. Mara worked in the hospital laundry, where every shift ended with her shoulders aching and the smell of industrial detergent living inside her hair. Vanessa knew this. She also forgot it every few weeks, the way people forgot facts they considered temporary. There's no reason to bite my head off, Vanessa said. I'm trying to make sure we handle this properly. We, all of us. You asked 12 questions about your apartments and 0 about Grandma's sewing box. What would you like me to ask? Whether the thimbles have appreciated? Corinne stepped between them, though there was 6 feet of sidewalk and no danger of anyone swinging. Can we not do this outside the lawyer's office? A delivery cyclist passed and shouted something at a turning sedan. Vanessa hugged her coat closed. I know this isn't what you expected, she told Mara. Mara looked at her. What did I expect? Well, after living with Grandma, I didn't live with her. You were there every night. I rented a room from Tasha. I slept at Grandma's when she couldn't be alone. Vanessa sighed. Fine. I'm not criticizing you. It always amazed Mara that Vanessa could say that while actively criticizing her. Corinne rubbed at a coffee stain on her sleeve. The row house could be good, Mayor. Those blocks are getting nicer. You called it a dump at Thanksgiving. I said the kitchen was a dump. You've never seen the kitchen. I saw pictures. Whose pictures? Corinne looked at Vanessa. There it was. Some conversation from which Mara had been absent, conducted while she had been measuring Evelyn's morphine or washing soup from a nightgown. Vanessa tucked her phone into her bag. We looked at the estate inventory after Grandma went into hospice, just so we'd understand what might need handling. You went through her property list before she died? We were planning. You were shopping. That is unfair. Mara almost laughed. Fairness had become Vanessa's favorite word the moment she got 6 apartments. Corinne touched Mara's arm. Nobody wanted Grandma to die. Mara stepped back, and Corinne's hand fell. That was the problem with Corinne. She said true things at the wrong time and expected truth to make them kind. Vanessa checked the street for her rideshare. I do think Grandma tried to balance things. You had a different relationship with her. You got her time. Mara stared at her. Vanessa heard it after she said it. Her face changed, but only slightly. You make it sound like a gift bag, Mara said. That isn't what I meant. You think I got the good part? I think you had access the rest of us didn't. Access to what? Her oxygen machine? Her bathroom at 4 a.m? To her, Vanessa snapped, then lowered her voice. You were there, Mara. You got to have conversations. You got to know what she wanted. Corinne and I had our own lives. The sentence landed between them, honest and ugly. Vanessa had a real estate licensing course she kept postponing, and a marriage that had ended so recently, she still wore the ring when she was distracted. Corinne managed a salon in Towson and seemed perpetually one late employee away from collapse. They had reasons for every missed evening, good reasons sometimes. Yet Mara could not remember anybody asking whether she had a life to postpone. A gray sedan pulled to the curb. Vanessa opened the rear door, then paused. We're meeting at Calder Court Saturday, 10 o'clock. You should come. Why? Because we're sisters. You weren't planning to give me an apartment. Vanessa's mouth tightened. I was planning to ask if you wanted to help us go through Grandma's records. So, work. Fine. Don't come. She got into the car. Corinne waited until it pulled away. She's having a hard time. So is everybody. She doesn't show it normally. She just showed me 12 apartments worth. Corinne shoved her hands into her coat pockets. You know they aren't free money, right? There are bills, repairs, tenants. It's probably a headache. Then give me your half. That shut her up. Mara's bus came 8 minutes later. She rode to the hospital with Grandma's envelope pressed between her work shoes and her bag. All afternoon, while feeding damp sheets into a machine hot enough to pinken her face, she kept hearing Vanessa say, You got her time. She had gotten time. She had gotten Evelyn whispering, Don't let me become work, after Mara changed the bed the first time. She had gotten the good mornings when Evelyn demanded lipstick before breakfast and called hospital oatmeal a personal insult. She had gotten the night Evelyn looked directly at her and said, Helen, tell those girls to stop fighting, mistaking Mara for the daughter she had buried years earlier. And she had gotten the final morning, when Evelyn was beyond speaking, and Mara sat beside her counting the pauses between breaths, waiting for one pause not to end. Yes, she had gotten time. By the end of her shift, Mara's anger had cooled into something worse: doubt. Maybe Evelyn had known exactly what she was doing. Maybe the apartments went to Vanessa and Corinne because they could manage them together. Vanessa understood leases, Corinne understood people, Mara understood how to remove blood from cotton, and how to persuade a dying woman to swallow half a cup of broth. Perhaps the row house was not punishment. Perhaps it was the size of Evelyn's confidence in her. At 9:30, Mara carried the envelope into the bedroom she rented from Tasha Green, a respiratory therapist who worked nights and labeled every item in the refrigerator. The room held a twin bed, a dresser with one stubborn drawer, and 3 unopened nursing school catalogs under a lamp. Mara sat cross-legged on the bed and emptied the envelope. 2 brass keys, 1 silver key, a copy of Arthur Bell's lease, a property tax statement, a handwritten card from Keene's office listing insurance information. No note from Evelyn. The lease was 12 pages, but Mara stopped on the first. Monthly rent? $575. She read it again. Even she knew that was absurdly low for a whole floor of a Baltimore row house. The term had 4 years remaining. Under additional conditions, Evelyn had written in blue ink, tenant responsible for ordinary interior upkeep as historically arranged. Owner responsible for structural, plumbing, electrical, roofing, and heating systems. Mara looked at the ceiling. Wonderful. The next morning, rain needled the windshield of Tasha's borrowed Corolla as Mara drove west. Weller Street was narrower than she remembered, a row of old brick houses pressed shoulder to shoulder as if sharing warmth. Number 1843 had peeling green trim, a bowed gutter, and a blue tarp tied over part of the roof. One upstairs shutter hung crooked. The front steps were swept clean. Arthur Bell sat on the top step in a brown work jacket, drinking from a thermos. He was smaller than Mara remembered, with a gray beard cut close to his face and heavy eyebrows that made his resting expression look accusatory. Beside him sat a metal toolbox, dented at one corner. Mara parked and stayed in the car long enough to feel foolish. When she finally approached, Arthur looked at the keys in her hand. You, Evelyn's granddaughter? Mara, I know which one. She stopped at the bottom step. Mr. Bell, I thought we should talk. Good. Water's been running behind the kitchen wall since 6:15. Mara glanced at the house. Running? Not rushing yet. Why are you sitting outside, waiting to see if my new landlord knows where the shutoff is? Rain ticked against his thermos. Mara tightened her grip on the keys. And if she doesn't? Arthur stood, picked up his toolbox, and moved aside so she could reach the door. Then we find out what else your grandmother left you. Mara climbed the steps and tried the first brass key. It stuck halfway into the lock. The silver one, Arthur said. She switched keys. Lift the knob. I am lifting it. You're touching it. Lift. She pulled upward, turned the key, and the door opened with a wet wooden groan. The entry smelled of coffee, old varnish, and something damp enough to have a shape. To the right, Arthur's front room was crowded but orderly. 2 armchairs, a scarred work table, a tall radio with its back removed, and narrow shelves holding jars of screws. A dining chair stood clamped upside down to the table, while glue dried along one leg. Straight ahead, a dark hallway led toward the kitchen. Mara heard the water before she saw it. A thin stream had pushed through a cracked square of paint behind the sink. It ran down the wall, slid behind the baseboard, and spread across the linoleum. Arthur had arranged towels around the puddle and set a yellow roasting pan beneath the worst drip. You've been watching this since 6:15? I've been containing it since 6:15. Watching wouldn't do much. Why didn't you shut off the water? I shut off the valve under the sink. Didn't stop it, means the leak's farther back. Mara set her bag on a chair. So where's the main shutoff? Arthur looked at her. Right, she said. The test. It's not a test. It's in the basement. Then why didn't you? Because the basement door is on the owner's side. He pointed toward a narrow door in the hall. A brass padlock held it closed. Mara took out the keys again. Neither brass key fit. The little key, Arthur said. The silver key opens the front door. It opens the front door and the padlock. That seems unsafe. That seems like Evelyn. The silver key opened it. Behind the door, steep wooden stairs descended into darkness. Mara found a switch. One bare bulb came on below, illuminating brick walls, metal pipes, and a furnace that looked large enough to have opinions. Arthur went first, one hand on the rail. Halfway down, he glanced back. Shoes any good? They're waterproof. That wasn't the question. Mara's heel slid on the next step. She caught the railing and glared at the back of his jacket. The basement floor was uneven concrete. Shelves sagged beneath paint cans, jars, folded tarps, and objects that appeared to have been saved on the chance civilization might someday run out of bent nails. A washing machine stood in one corner beside a utility sink. Above them, water tapped inside the pipes. Arthur pointed behind the furnace. There, a red wheel valve sat between the wall and a thick iron pipe, nearly hidden by cobwebs. Mara crouched and reached for it. Other direction, Arthur said. I haven't moved it yet. You were about to. You don't know that. Your wrist told me. She tried turning the valve clockwise. It did not move. Arthur folded his arms. Do you want to help? I want you not to snap it. I'm not going to snap an iron valve with my bare hand. People get ambitious when they're embarrassed. Mara stood. Mr. Bell, if your goal is to make me sell this house before breakfast, you're doing beautifully. Something shifted behind his eyebrows. Not guilt exactly. Recognition, maybe. He took a small can from a shelf and sprayed lubricant around the valve stem. Let it sit. How long? Longer if you stare at it. Upstairs, he poured coffee into a second mug without asking whether she wanted any. It was strong enough to taste scorched and came with a thumbprint on the rim. Mara drank it anyway, standing in the kitchen while the water continued its patient destruction. Arthur opened the cabinet beneath the sink and pulled out the soaked towels. The plumber Evelyn used? Mara asked. Retired. Do you know another one? I know 6. 2 won't come on Sunday. 1 drinks, 1 found religion and doubled his prices. 1's good but talks about cryptocurrency while he works. I'll take religion. You can't afford him. She lowered the mug. You don't know what I can afford. Arthur looked at her coat, her borrowed car through the kitchen window, and the small crack in her phone screen when she took it out. I know what Evelyn could afford, he said. She was behind on the roof and put off this wall twice. The wall was already leaking? Not like this. Then how? Pipe's old. Walls are older. Water remains enthusiastic. He knelt with a stiffness he tried to hide and pressed his palm to the plaster. Mara noticed one of his hands trembling. The tremor quieted when he braced it against the wall. You can do this, she said. I can open it. That's not the same as fixing it. But you know how. I know enough to make a bad decision look professional. Despite herself, Mara smiled. Arthur saw it and frowned, as if she had violated a term of the lease. The valve moved after 20 minutes, first with a groan and then a sudden jerk that sent Mara's knuckles into the brick. She swore. Good, Arthur said. Means you didn't break anything important. The water behind the kitchen wall slowed to a drip. They opened the plaster beneath the sink with a utility knife and a small pry bar. Mara held a flashlight while Arthur worked. Wet chunks fell into the cabinet, exposing a copper pipe with a greenish crust around one joint. There, he said. That tiny thing did all this? Tiny things get time. He showed her how the joint had thinned and how moisture had darkened the wood behind it. There was no triumphant competence in his voice, only familiarity. He might have been introducing her to a neighbor everyone else found difficult. Can it be patched? She asked. Temporarily. How temporarily? That depends how honest you need me to be. Very. Then no. He sat back on his heels. Section needs replacing. Wall needs drying. Cabinet may survive if we stop being sentimental about the bottom panel. I'm not sentimental about the cabinet. You don't know. It was your grandmother's. It's fake oak with a mouse hole. She was sentimental about terrible things. Mara looked at the water stains spreading across the exposed wood. Can we turn the water back on? Not until the pipe's capped. How much? For the repair? For all of it. Arthur named a range. The low number was more than Mara had in checking. The high number was almost her next nursing school deposit, still sitting untouched in savings because she had missed the latest enrollment date. She opened her banking app anyway. Arthur turned his face toward the window, granting her a privacy that came too late. I can call someone, she said. Call Darnell Ruiz. Numbers on the board beside the refrigerator. A corkboard hung beneath an old calendar. Most of it was covered with takeout menus and appointment cards. Near the bottom, Evelyn had written Darnell, plumbing in thick blue marker, followed by a number. Mara touched the handwriting. The letters were strong, before the tremor, before Mara had started filling out forms for her. Arthur pulled the yellow roasting pan from beneath the drip. She put his number there because she lost her phone every other day. She didn't lose it. She left it in places where it had no business being. She liked to know where it was. She put it in the freezer, once, twice. Mara called Darnell. He answered with loud music in the background, listened without interrupting, and said he could arrive in an hour. His Sunday rate made Mara close her eyes, but when she mentioned Evelyn's name, his voice softened. Miss Bennett passed 3 weeks ago. I'm sorry. She still have that green coffee pot? Mara looked at Arthur. He wants to know about the coffee pot. Arthur pointed toward a dented metal pot on the stove. Yes, Mara said. It's here. Then don't let Belle make coffee in it. I'll be there by 10. Arthur appeared offended. My coffee is fine. He didn't say it wasn't. He implied. While they waited, Mara asked to see the rest of the property. Arthur told her she owned it and didn't need permission. But he followed close enough to make clear that permission would have been appreciated. His lease covered the front room, a bedroom behind it, the kitchen, and a bathroom added sometime when avocado green tile had seemed optimistic. Everything was worn, but nothing was neglected. The shelves were dusted, the stove had been scrubbed. The bedroom door stood open just far enough for Mara to see a neatly made bed and a framed photograph on the dresser. Arthur noticed her looking and pulled the door closed. Upstairs? Mara asked. Owner's rooms. You don't use them? Not since Evelyn stopped coming over. Grandma had come here? Mara kept the question to herself. The upstairs door opened from the entry hall with the second brass key. Dust floated in the pale light from the landing window. The air smelled colder there, untouched by Arthur's coffee and wood glue. There were 3 rooms, a narrow bedroom facing the street, a smaller room at the back, and a middle room lined with shelves. Furniture wore old sheets. Boxes sat beneath the windows. A sewing machine stood folded into a wooden cabinet. Mara crossed the front room and lifted the corner of a sheet. Beneath it was a blue velvet settee she remembered from Evelyn's old house, before Evelyn moved into the apartment. Mara had once spilled orange soda on one cushion and blamed Vanessa. The stain was still there. Near the ceiling, plaster sagged in a swollen gray curve. Arthur stayed in the doorway. Roof leak? I guessed. Started over the back room. Wind drove it forward last month. Why didn't Grandma repair it? Why didn't she replace her shoes when the soles wore through? She hated shopping. She hated admitting anything could no longer be patched. Mara walked into the back room. A blue tarp had been spread across the floor beneath 2 buckets. Water tapped into one with slow, hollow plunks. The ceiling was stained the color of old tea. How long has the tarp been on the roof? Since November. That's 4 months. I know the names of months. Why didn't you tell anyone? I told Evelyn. She was in hospice in November. I told Vanessa. Mara turned. Vanessa knew. Came by with a man who took pictures. Said the estate needed a property inventory. She asked if the tarp could be seen from the street. The room seemed to tilt, though the floor was level there. When was this? Week before Thanksgiving. At Thanksgiving, Vanessa had stood in Evelyn's apartment, slicing pie, and told Corinne the Weller Street kitchen was a dump. She had known about the roof. She had known Arthur was here. She had walked these rooms while Mara was at the pharmacy, arguing about a prescription. What did the man say? That replacing the roof would cost more than patching it. And Vanessa said it wasn't her decision. That part, Mara believed. Darnell arrived in mud-spattered boots carrying 2 tool bags and a paper sack of breakfast sandwiches. He was broad, cheerful, and younger than Mara expected, with rain shining on his shaved head. He hugged Arthur, then seemed surprised when Arthur hugged him back. Don't get used to it, Arthur said. Someone died. Darnell's cheer settled. He offered Mara his hand. Your grandma could argue a bill down while feeding you pound cake. Dangerous woman. That sounds like her. He inspected the opened wall and the basement pipes, then agreed with Arthur's diagnosis almost word for word. You did most of my work, he told Arthur. I did the part that keeps you from charging her to discover the leak. I charge for wisdom. You charge for a van with your face on it. Darnell grinned, brand recognition. He replaced the damaged section while Mara watched from the kitchen doorway. Arthur disappeared into the front room and returned with a slim black notebook. He wrote the date, the location of the leak, and the material Darnell used. "What's that?" Mara asked. "Record. For this house, for every house." He slid the notebook onto the counter. Its pages were filled with dates, apartment numbers, measurements, model numbers, and notes written in Arthur's square, cramped hand. There were several more notebooks in a drawer. Mara opened the oldest one. Calder Court was written across the first page. "Those are my sister's buildings." Arthur fitted the cap back onto his pen. "They were Evelyn's buildings," he said. "Your sisters only have the keys." Mara turned another page. "Linden Place. Basement shutoff. Behind cage 3. Key sticks. Do not force." Below it, Arthur had drawn a simple map of pipes, arrows, and unit numbers. The next page listed furnace filters by size. Farther in, he had written, "Mrs. Alvarez hears banging at 5 a.m. Not pipes. Delivery door closer. Adjusted 6/14. "How many of these do you have?" Mara asked. "Depends which these you mean." "Notebooks?" 14. Darnell whistled from beneath the sink. "That man can tell you which toilet ran during the first Bush administration." "Second," Arthur said. "First Bush toilets were quieter." "Can my sisters use them?" Arthur looked at Mara as if she had asked whether Vanessa could use his toothbrush. "They're my records, but they're about the buildings. So are my memories. Those don't belong to the estate either." Darnell leaned out of the cabinet. "I wouldn't lead with that if they ask nice." "They won't." Mara closed the notebook. "They might. Then we'll all enjoy the novelty." She wanted to defend Vanessa and Corinne, which irritated her almost as much as Arthur did. They were selfish, not monsters. Vanessa had taken pictures of a leaking roof while their grandmother was dying, but perhaps the attorney had asked her to. Corinne had called Mara every other morning during hospice, even if she usually spent those calls describing how guilty she felt for not coming. Families accumulated evidence in all directions. Mara knew that. She also knew which evidence she preferred. Darnell finished the repair in under an hour. When he turned the water back on, Mara stood beside the exposed wall, listening for a sound she hoped she would recognize. "What am I listening for?" she asked. "The sound of me needing to redo it," Darnell said. "And what does that sound like?" "Belle becoming happy." Arthur grunted. No water appeared. The pipes gave a shudder, then settled. Darnell wrote out an invoice on a carbon form. The number was near the low end of Arthur's estimate, but it still made Mara's stomach contract. She transferred money from savings on her phone, while Darnell pretended to inspect the faucet. "You don't have to pay all of it today," he said. "Yes, I do." "Half today, half in 30. She looked at him. "It's not charity," he added. "I charge interest." "How much?" "1 cup of Evelyn's coffee next time. Belle's making it, then cash only." Mara paid the full amount. After he left, Arthur began removing the wet cabinet floor. He worked without announcing that he had decided to work, fitting a pry bar beneath the warped particle board. "You said interior upkeep is your responsibility," Mara said. "This is interior. The pipe caused it. The pipe is done causing it." That's a very selective reading of the lease. Learned from a landlord? She crouched on the other side of the cabinet. "Tell me what to do." "Go home." "No." "Call a roofer." "I'm not calling a roofer before I know whether I'm keeping the house." The pry bar stopped. Arthur sat back. "Then don't. Don't call. Don't pretend the roof is the decision. It's a roof. It doesn't care who owns it. I inherited this house yesterday. You inherited it 3 weeks ago. Yesterday someone explained it." Mara felt the retort rise, sharp and ready. Then Arthur passed her the utility knife, handle first. "Cut along that seam," he said. "Not toward your thumb. I don't want to explain blood to the next landlord." They removed the ruined panel and propped a box fan in front of the cabinet. Arthur showed her how to clean the exposed wood with a diluted solution from beneath the utility sink. He did not praise her when she mixed it correctly. He merely stopped watching. By noon, the rain had eased. Mara stood beneath the bowed gutter outside and called 3 roofing companies. One could inspect in 2 weeks. One did not answer. The third agreed to come Tuesday afternoon and warned her there would be a fee. Arthur watched from the steps, eating one of Darnell's abandoned breakfast sandwiches. "What?" Mara asked. "You sound like Evelyn on the phone." "I do not. You say I understand when you mean I'm not paying that." "I was being polite. She called it that too." Mara looked up at the blue tarp. One corner fluttered in the wind. "Why was your rent so low?" she asked. Arthur chewed slowly. "Lease says what it says. The lease also says ordinary interior upkeep, as historically arranged. That isn't a normal phrase. Evelyn wasn't a normal landlord. What was the arrangement? I worked. For her, for the properties. She paid some invoices. Other times she took it off the rent. So the $575 was because you maintained the buildings. Partly. What was the other part? Arthur folded the sandwich wrapper into smaller and smaller squares. My wife got sick. We moved here because the stairs at our old place were worse. Mara waited. He looked toward the front window. Evelyn lowered the rent. I told her I didn't need favors. She told me it wasn't a favor if she planned to be insufferable about it. What was your wife's name? Lucille. The name rested between them only briefly before Arthur stood. Roofers will try to sell you new plywood whether you need it or not, he said. Make them show you. He went inside, leaving the folded wrapper on the step. Mara picked it up before the wind could. The roofer showed her on Tuesday. Rot had spread beneath the rear section. The tarp had slowed it, not stopped it. The front could be patched for now, but the back needed to be stripped and rebuilt before another hard storm. He handed her an estimate printed from a small machine in his truck. Mara read the total twice. That includes disposal? She asked. It includes everything. What if I dispose of it? He looked at her hospital laundry uniform. You own a roofing dumpster? No. Then it includes disposal. Arthur stood inside the doorway, saying nothing. He waited until the truck was gone. How bad? He asked. You heard. I heard numbers. Numbers can be bad in different ways. The kind where I either sell the house or stop eating. You'd get hungry before closing. Thank you. She tucked the estimate into her bag beside the keys. Would you stay if someone else bought it until my lease ends? And then, depends who bought it. What if they wanted you out sooner? They can want things. Mara studied him. You really aren't worried? Arthur looked up at the sagging gutter. Worry is noisy. Doesn't mean it isn't there. Before she left, he handed her a sheet torn from one of his notebooks. It listed 3 other roofers, 2 with stars beside their names, and one marked, talks too much, but honest. I thought your records were private. That's not a record. That's an opinion. Mara called all 3. By Saturday, she had 2 more estimates, neither low enough to feel merciful. She carried them in her bag when she arrived at Calder Court at 10:15. Vanessa was standing in the entry hall beside a young man in a fitted navy suit. Corinne sat on the stairs with a legal pad balanced on her knee. You're late, Vanessa said. I'm not on the deed. You can't charge me. The man laughed. Vanessa did not. This is Scott Mercer from Harbor Residential. Scott shook Mara's hand with the energetic grip of someone who expected to be remembered. We help small owners turn passive property into active performance. Mara glanced at Corinne. Corinne widened her eyes slightly, confirming she had no idea what that meant either. Calder Court was a 3-story brick building with 6 apartments, black and white tile in the foyer, and brass mailboxes polished thin around the slots. It smelled faintly of fried onions and floor wax. Evelyn had kept a wooden chair near the radiator for residents waiting on rides. The chair was gone. Where's Grandma's chair? Mara asked. Vanessa gestured toward a pile beside the basement door. Scott says we need to declutter shared spaces. The chair lay on its side beneath a broken mop bucket. One of its arms was loose. Mara set it upright. We're doing a walkthrough, Corinne said quickly. Looking at what needs updating. Updating or repairing? Both, Scott said. The building has good bones, but the rents are substantially under market. Vanessa watched Mara's face. We're gathering information. Nobody has decided anything. A door opened on the first floor. A woman with silver braids stepped into the hall carrying a canvas grocery bag. Mara recognized Denise Carter, who had delivered sweet potato pie to Evelyn every Christmas and refused to share the recipe. Denise looked from Vanessa to Corinne to the man in the suit. You're Evelyn's granddaughters. We met at the memorial, Vanessa said warmly. Yes. You cried into my scarf. Corinne made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. Denise noticed Mara beside the chair. Honey, what did they do to that? I'm still collecting evidence. Vanessa crossed her arms. We moved it out of the fire path. It's been in that corner since 1999, Denise said. If there was a fire, Evelyn planned to ride it down the stairs. Scott smiled professionally. We're just bringing the property into compliance with current best practices. Denise looked at him. Who are you? He's advising us, Vanessa said. On chairs? On management? Denise shifted her grocery bag to the other hip. Then he can advise you about the heat in 2B. It knocks all night, and Walter's been calling since Wednesday. Scott turned to Vanessa. Do we have an open ticket? Vanessa looked at Corinne. Corinne searched her legal pad. There was a voicemail. I thought it was Linden Place. It's here, Denise said. Walter Ruiz, second floor. Mara's attention sharpened. Knocking in the radiator or the wall? The pipes. Starts around 11. Does it stop if he turns the valve all the way open? Denise considered. Evelyn used to tell people not to leave them halfway. Scott's smile faded by 1 degree. We'll inspect the system. Mara reached into her bag. She had brought the page Arthur tore out, not his notebooks. Still, she could see his square handwriting in her mind. Banging at 5 a.m., not pipes. Delivery door closer. Before you pay someone to inspect everything, she said, you should talk to Arthur. Vanessa's expression closed. The tenant at Weller Street? Scott asked. He maintained both buildings for years. He no longer does, Vanessa said. Why not? We had concerns about his billing. Mara looked at her. You accused him of padding an invoice. I asked for clarification. Did you get it? He became hostile. That means yes, Corinne said softly. Vanessa turned. Excuse me? Corinne stared at her legal pad. I remember. It was the boiler pump at Linden. Grandma showed me the receipt. Arthur charged less than the part cost because he used a supplier credit. For once, Vanessa had no immediate answer. Denise moved toward the stairs. Mr. Bell fixed my ceiling after that upstairs toilet came through it. Didn't charge Evelyn for the last 2 days. Scott adjusted his cuff. Historical knowledge can be useful, but professional management creates consistent systems. Arthur had a system, Mara said. And where is it? In 14 notebooks he doesn't want to give you. Vanessa stared at her. You've seen them? Some. They belong to the properties. They belong to him. They contain information about our buildings. Then maybe you shouldn't have called him a thief. The front door opened behind them, admitting a draft and a man carrying 2 paper grocery bags. He nodded to Denise, stepped around the chair, and continued upstairs. Vanessa waited until his footsteps faded. You inherited a house 2 days ago, she said quietly. That doesn't make you an expert. No? Then stop acting like Grandma appointed you to supervise us. Mara looked at the loose arm of Evelyn's chair, the management consultant standing where it used to sit, and the blank page beneath Corinne's list of forgotten calls. She didn't appoint me to anything, Mara said. She just left me the person who knows what you own. That, Vanessa said, is exactly what I mean. What do you mean? You're enjoying this. Mara almost answered too fast. The satisfaction was there, small and ugly, in watching Vanessa discover that the buildings required knowledge she had dismissed. Denying it would make Vanessa wrong about the facts and right about Mara. I'm not enjoying Walter's heat keeping him awake. You know what I'm talking about. Scott stepped forward with both palms visible, as though easing strangers apart in an elevator. It's normal for transitions to stir up strong feelings. What's important is that ownership has a clear operational structure. Denise paused on the second landing. Ownership needs to bleed that radiator first. Scott glanced upward. We'll include it on the maintenance ticket. She just told you Walter's been calling since Wednesday, Mara said. And we're responding. On Saturday. I'm here on Saturday, aren't I? Vanessa gave Mara a look that said, see? A professional. Corinne closed her legal pad. Why don't we go upstairs and look at it? We're not licensed HVAC technicians, Scott said. No, but I'm licensed to listen to knocking. Corinne stood. That's most of my job at the salon. Denise led them to the second floor. Walter Ruiz was a retired postal clerk with a thin mustache and a habit of wearing collared shirts even at home. He answered in slippers and invited all 5 of them inside as if he had been expecting a committee. The apartment was warm enough to fog Mara's glasses. It's not that the heat doesn't work, he explained. It works like it has a grudge. A radiator beneath the front window hissed peacefully. Scott crouched beside it. When does the knocking begin? After the boiler cycles at night. First there, then along the wall. Walter pointed toward the bedroom. Sounds like somebody trapped in a pipe with a wrench. Have you adjusted the valve? Miss Evelyn said. Never, halfway. Open or closed? Mara crouched beside Scott. The valve was fully open. Could be trapped air, he said. Walter shook his head. Arthur bledded in October. Vanessa exhaled through her nose. Does every conversation in this building end with Arthur? Only the ones about things Arthur fixed, Denise said. Mara took out her phone. I'll call him. Vanessa moved into the hallway. Don't make this into a favor. What would you like me to make it into? We can hire someone. Then hire someone. Scott stood. I have a contractor who can come Monday. Walter glanced toward the bedroom as a pipe gave one polite metallic tick. Arthur can probably tell us in 30 seconds, Mara said. Then ask him, Vanessa replied. But be clear that we're not retaining his services. Mara dialed before her sister could add conditions. Arthur answered with, Did the roof fall in? Not yet. Then I'm busy. I'm at Calder Court. Walter's radiator is knocking after the boiler cycles. Silence. Valve open? He asked. All the way. Bedroom or front room? He hears it in the bedroom wall. Ask if someone painted the bedroom radiator. Mara relayed the question. Walter looked offended. Management company painted it in August. I complained about the smell. Arthur heard him. They paint the air vent too? Walter crossed into the bedroom, everyone following until 6 adults stood around a narrow radiator beside a dresser. White paint sealed the small metal vent on its side. It's painted over, Mara said. Of course it is. New vents in the top drawer of the workbench at Weller. Blue box. Why is the part at Weller? Because I bought 6 and used 5. Scott leaned toward Mara's phone. A sealed vent wouldn't necessarily explain hammering in the supply line. Arthur's voice became pleasantly formal. Who's that? Management consultant, Mara said. Ask the management consultant why the radiator is pitched toward the wall. They all looked down. One end sat lower than the other. A folded piece of cardboard had compressed beneath the wrong foot. Scott's face altered. Water's collecting, Arthur continued. Replace the vent. Lift the far end a 1/4 inch. There are steel shims in the same box. Don't use wood. Don't use cardboard. And don't let Walter lift it. His back was bothering him at Christmas. Walter stared at the phone. How do you know about my back? You complained for 40 minutes. I was making conversation. You're bad at it. Arthur hung up. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Denise said, 32 seconds. Scott straightened his suit jacket. That's useful information. It doesn't replace an inspection of the full system. No, Mara said. It just replaces you charging for this one. Vanessa's face hardened. Corinne looked down, hiding another smile. Scott lasted 20 more minutes. He described online rent collection, quarterly inspections, preferred vendors, and a strategic adjustment that would bring Calder Court closer to market rates. He never said eviction. He said tenant turnover. He never said people would leave. He said the property would attract a different profile. Walter listened from his doorway. Denise leaned against the banister with her arms crossed. What kind of adjustment? Corinne asked. Scott gave a percentage. The number was large enough to silence the hallway. Vanessa recovered first, not all at once. Of course not. We'd review each lease and create a phased plan. Walter looked at her. I've been here 17 years. And nobody is asking you to leave, Vanessa said. Not in those words. Mara watched Vanessa's hands. Her sister was twisting the place where her wedding ring used to sit. That small motion made it harder to hate her cleanly. We're only gathering information, Vanessa repeated. Denise nodded toward Scott. He gathered my chair. The chair was still beside the basement door when Mara left. One arm hung loose, and the seat bore a pale rectangle where years of waiting bodies had protected the wood from sunlight. She picked it up. Vanessa followed her outside. Where are you taking that? To get it fixed. It belongs to the building. You put it in the trash. It wasn't in the trash. It was under a broken mop bucket beside a door marked bulk pickup. We were clearing the hall, then consider it cleared. Vanessa caught one of the chair's legs. They stood on the sidewalk, each holding one end like poorly coordinated movers. Mara, stop. Let go. I'm not fighting you over a chair. You followed me outside and grabbed it. Corinne emerged behind them, carrying her legal pad. Technically, that qualifies. Vanessa released the leg. Take it. Take anything that lets you feel like Grandma chose you. The chair's weight shifted suddenly against Mara's hip. Corinne said, Vanessa? No, I'm tired of being treated like I broke into her house and stole the silver. Grandma made the decision. She left us the apartments and left me the problem. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Vanessa's eyes flashed. Do you think the rest of us didn't know what she was doing? She always picked one person to need. First Mom, then Arthur, then you. She made dependence feel like love, and you were happy to be the favorite. Mara's grip tightened on the chair. Corinne stepped off the curb. We should not be doing this here. Where should we do it? Vanessa asked. At another memorial? A bus sighed to a stop at the corner. Someone across the street dragged open a metal storefront gate. Mara said, You could have stayed one night. Vanessa looked away. Not 18 months, Mara continued. One night. I asked you the week Grandma stopped sleeping. You said you had an early meeting. I did. You sold ad space for a neighborhood coupon book. It was my job. I had a job. And you made your choice. Mara felt the sentence go through her without landing anywhere solid. Vanessa's anger collapsed as quickly as it had appeared. She looked tired, older than 31, the skin beneath her eyes pale in the winter light. I'm not saying it was fair, she said. I'm saying you chose to. She went back inside. Corinne remained on the sidewalk. Her meeting got canceled. What? That morning. She never told you. Mara waited for the rest. Corinne stared at the legal pad. She drove to Grandma's building, sat in her car for almost an hour. She called me crying and said she couldn't go upstairs. That's supposed to make it better? No. Corinne's voice was quiet. It's just what happened. Mara put the chair into Tasha's back seat. It barely fit. One leg stuck between the front seats and the loose arm knocked against the window each time she turned. Arthur opened his door after the third knock. His eyes went to the chair. Where'd you steal that? Calder Court. Then it's not stealing. That building owed you something. You know it? I repaired that arm in 2008. It didn't take. It lasted 17 years. How long do you need an arm to last? Mara carried it into the front room. Arthur cleared space beside his work table, then turned the chair over and examined the joint. Somebody moved it by the arm, he said. Scott Mercer. Don't know him. He creates active performance. Is that a disease? He's the management company Vanessa wants to hire. Arthur made a low sound and reached for a screwdriver. She wants your notebooks, Mara said. No, I told her they were yours. Good. But Walter's radiator vent was painted shut, and the pipe was knocking. I know. You couldn't have known before I called. I knew somebody would paint one eventually. That's why I bought 6. He removed 2 screws from beneath the chair seat. His right hand trembled as he set them into a dish, but the screwdriver stayed steady against the metal. Why did you stop working for Grandma? Mara asked. I told you. No. You said Vanessa accused you. That's why you stopped working for Vanessa. Arthur's gaze remained on the chair. What happened between you and Grandma? Nothing happened. You worked on her buildings for 22 years, then stopped. She let the Weller roof rot while paying $575 in rent. Something happened. The screwdriver slipped. Arthur set it down with care. Your grandmother came here in October, he said, before hospice. Climbed those stairs without telling anybody. Mara remembered Evelyn's fall that month, the bruises along her left side, the insistence that she had tripped near her own bathroom. She fell here? She came to ask me to go back to the buildings. I told her no. We argued. She went upstairs anyway. You let her? You ever try stopping Evelyn? You should have called me. She told me you had enough. Mara could hear Grandma saying it, brisk and protective, making decisions about everybody's limits except her own. Arthur turned the chair upright. She fell on the landing, wouldn't let me call an ambulance, wouldn't let me call you. Said if I did, you'd quit school for good. I wasn't in school. She knew that. The room seemed too warm. What else did she say? Arthur picked up the loose arm and tested the split joint with his thumb. She said she'd already taken too much from you. Mara stood very still. And then she left me this house. Arthur looked at her for the first time. Maybe, he said, she thought a house was something you could put down. Mara looked at the chair between them. That doesn't make sense. Most things she said before lunch didn't. I mean, leaving me a house because she thought she took too much from me. A house with a ruined roof and a tenant. Don't forget the gutter. I'm trying. Arthur picked up the screwdriver again. People apologize in the language they know. She didn't apologize. No. She didn't even leave a note. No, she could have said something. She could have replaced the roof. Mara laughed once without humor. Arthur began working the screws loose as if that settled the matter. What did she want you to do? She asked. About what? After she fell. You said she came to ask you to go back to the buildings. She wanted me to show Vanessa where everything was. And did you? You know I didn't. Because of the invoice. Because your sister looked me in the face and decided I was the kind of man who'd steal $47 from a woman whose toilets I'd unclogged for 22 years. That's specific. That's what she said, I added. Did Grandma know why you refused? Evelyn knew why people refused her. She just didn't consider it binding. Arthur worked glue into the split joint with the tip of a thin wooden stick. Mara watched his shaking hand. She wanted you to help them. She wanted the buildings looked after. That's not the same thing. It was to her. He clamped the arm and wiped away the excess glue. The repair looked less like a transformation than a truce. Pressure applied carefully. The broken pieces held in place until they remembered how they fit. Mara's phone buzzed. Vanessa had started a group message. Scott's company can begin March 1st. Corinne and I are reviewing the agreement. Also, please return Calder property to Calder. A photograph followed. It showed the empty corner where the chair had stood. Mara held the phone toward Arthur. She wants it back. Tell her glue dries overnight. I think she means now. Then tell her time remains linear. Corinne sent a separate message seconds later. Do not answer her yet. She's still mad about the notebooks. Mara locked the screen. You're enjoying this, Arthur said. No, I'm not. You smiled. I'm not enjoying my family falling apart. Didn't say that was the part. Mara took her bag from the floor. The roofing estimate seemed to have gained weight. At the door, she stopped. If I sell, what happens to your lease? It continues. I know legally. I mean, what happens to you? Arthur adjusted the clamp by a fraction. Same thing that happens every time rent changes hands. I wait to see who thinks ownership improved their personality. That's not an answer. It's the one I have. Tasha was awake when Mara returned, sitting at the kitchen island in a satin bonnet and hospital scrubs, eating cereal from a mixing bowl. She had labeled a new carton of oat milk with "Mine, date opened," and "This means you, Mara." You look like a house fell on you, Tasha said. Only the estimate? Bad. Mara handed her one of the pages. Tasha read the total and set down her spoon. Does the roof come with a second house? No. Gold shingles? Regular shingles. Do they sing? Only when wet. Tasha pushed the estimate back. Sell. That's what everybody says. Then everybody has met a roofing contractor. Mara opened the refrigerator. Her half contained mustard, eggs, and a container of rice, whose label read, "Safe but depressing." You said there's a tenant? Tasha asked. First floor. 4 years left on his lease. At normal rent? At rent from when people paid for coffee with buttons. Tasha watched her crack 2 eggs into a bowl. Can you raise it? Not until the lease ends. Can you afford the house without raising it? Mara whisked harder than necessary. That means no, Tasha said. It means I don't know yet. You know the roof number. I also know the tax number, insurance, utilities, and what he pays. Look at you, land baron. Please don't call me that. Fine. Slum queen. Mara gave her a look. Tasha's smile faded. I'm sorry. You don't have to be. I do, actually. There's a limit to jokes before they become things your family would say. Mara poured the eggs into a pan. The burner clicked 3 times before lighting. Tasha stirred her cereal. Speaking of money, the condo fee went up again. Mara turned. I wasn't going to tell you today. That's what people say when they tell you today. I can cover next month. After that, I need another $150 for the room. Mara stared at the eggs as their edges turned white. Tasha hurried on. I'm not making money off you. You can see the notice. Building insurance went up, water went up, everything went up except my desire to work. I believe you. I hate asking. I know. If you need time, we can figure something out. Mara nodded. It was easier to accept bad news when nobody had caused it on purpose. It was also harder to be angry at. That night, she lay awake beneath the soft whine of the ceiling fan and calculated until every number began to look personal. She could pay Tasha's increase and continue saving. She could pay for a patch on the front roof and gamble on the rear. She could put the full replacement on credit and spend years feeding interest. She could move into the owner's rooms at Weller Street, but not until the roof and ceiling were safe, which required money she might save by moving. The house had created a circular problem with excellent masonry. At 2 in the morning, she searched recent row house sales. Renovated properties looked bright and impossible, all white kitchens and black faucets. Unrenovated ones were described as opportunities. Tenant-occupied ones were described with exclamation points, which she distrusted. By sunrise, she had filled 3 notebook pages and reached the same conclusion Tasha had reached before finishing her cereal. Sell. Vanessa answered on the second ring. "I know an agent," she said before Mara finished. "Of course you do. Her name is Lisa Kramer. She helped with the valuation photos." "The photos you took before Grandma died?" A pause. "Yes. Was Lisa the person with you at Weller Street?" "Yes." Mara pushed aside a basket of folded hospital towels and lowered her voice. She was on break in a storage room because it was the only place without fluorescent conversation. "Why didn't you tell me about the roof? It wasn't yours then. It was Grandma's. And Grandma wouldn't let us do anything. You could have told me. You were already handling her appointments, medication, food, laundry, and every crisis she manufactured because she didn't want to admit she needed hospice. What would telling you have done besides give you one more thing to fail at fixing?" The words were harsh. The question was not. Mara sat on an overturned supply bin. Vanessa continued, more quietly. "You think I didn't see what was happening to you? I think you saw from a safe distance." "Yes," Vanessa said. "I did." Mara had been prepared for denial. Agreement left nowhere to put the anger. "Give Lisa my number," she said. Lisa arrived at Weller Street 2 days later, in a cream-colored coat and sensible rubber-soled boots. She was in her 50s with reading glasses on a beaded chain and the unflustered manner of someone accustomed to strangers blaming her for square footage. Arthur opened the door before Mara could use her key. "You're the picture woman," he said. "Lisa Kramer, good to see you again. Is it?" She smiled. "You haven't decided." Arthur looked at Mara. "You have. I'm getting information. That's how decisions dress when they don't want company." Mara gave him written notice before asking to see the leased rooms. She had found a template online, printed it at the hospital, and signed 2 copies. Arthur read every line. "You spelled premises right," he said. "I work very hard. You listed inspection as the purpose. That's what this is? Not showing? No buyers? Just Lisa." He folded the notice and tucked it into his shirt pocket, then inspect. The house seemed meaner with a real estate agent inside it. Lisa photographed the kitchen wall, measured the upstairs rooms, checked windows, and made notes about the roof. She praised the original trim and said the block had shown movement, which Mara assumed meant prices, not geography. In Arthur's front room, Lisa paused beside the work table. "You do beautiful work." Arthur was sanding the edge of a cabinet door, sometimes. She ran one finger above, not on, the polished wood of the repaired chair. "This could sell. It already has a home." The glue had dried. The clamp was gone. The loose arm sat solidly in place, though Arthur had not refinished it enough to erase the repair. A faint line remained in the wood. Lisa completed her notes on the front steps. "The lease is the major complication," she said. Arthur's sanding stopped inside. Mara kept her voice low. "It transfers to a buyer." "Yes. And at $575, most owner-occupants won't consider it. Investors will discount for the rent, the roof, and the condition." "How much?" Lisa showed her a range. Even the high end, minus repair concessions and selling expenses, would leave Mara with less than she had imagined. It was still money, more than she had ever possessed. Enough for nursing tuition and a used car that did not belong to Tasha. "What kind of buyer?" Mara asked. "Most likely cash. Someone prepared to wait out the lease or negotiate an early departure with the tenant." Behind the front window, the sandpaper went silent. "Negotiate how?" "Offer relocation money." "Sometimes tenants prefer that. And if he doesn't, the lease remains." Lisa tucked her tablet into her bag. "I'll be honest. An occupied property in this condition won't inspire gentle offers. That doesn't mean you shouldn't list. It means you should know what you're inviting." After she left, Mara found Arthur in the front room, covering the repaired chair with an old sheet. "You heard her," Mara said. "House has thin walls. I haven't listed it. You called an agent. I can't afford the roof. Then sell." His voice held no accusation, which felt worse. Mara leaned against the doorway. "I asked what would happen to you, and I answered. No, you said you'd wait." Arthur smoothed the sheet over the chair's back. "That is what happens to people who rent," he said. "Someone else decides. We wait. Mara crossed her arms. You make it sound like you're furniture. Furniture gets moved more carefully. That chair got thrown beside a mop bucket. Then furniture with a lease. She wanted him to argue. She wanted him to say the house mattered, that Lucille had lived there, that he had nowhere else to go. Something she could weigh against tuition and rent and the roof estimate. Instead, he lifted the covered chair and carried it toward the hall. Where are you going? To Calder. You don't have to take it now. Glue's dry. I can drive you. It has legs. It's a chair. So, it has 4. Arthur maneuvered it through the doorway before Mara could stop him. She followed onto the steps. You're going to carry that 14 blocks? 11. In the cold? Baltimore's had cold before. She took hold of the back. At least let me help. He did not release it. For several seconds they stood on the sidewalk with the chair suspended between them. You don't owe those buildings anything, Mara said. I'm returning a chair. To people who accused you of stealing. The chair didn't. He walked away carrying it upside down over one shoulder. The repaired arm pointed behind him like a question Mara had failed to answer. Lisa emailed the listing agreement that afternoon. Mara read it during her lunch break, then again in Tasha's kitchen, while Tasha watched a reality show about people renovating houses with budgets that seemed fictional. You're hovering over the signature button, Tasha said. I'm reading. You've been reading one paragraph for 7 minutes. It has semicolons. Nothing good happens after a semicolon. Mara scrolled to the estimated proceeds. Even the lower figure could pay for 2 years of nursing school if she continued working. She could replace the car she did not own. She could put money aside and stop calculating whether a dentist could wait another month. She signed. The listing went live Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, Lisa had 3 inquiries, all from investors. The first wanted the house empty. The second asked whether the tenant was cooperative. The third, a man named Rick Danner, agreed to tour it occupied and said he had experience with inherited properties. Rick arrived Saturday wearing expensive sneakers and no coat, though the temperature was below 40. He walked through the house recording notes into his phone. Original floors, he said upstairs. People like that. They're covered with carpet, underneath. How do you know? Houses this age. He pulled back a loose corner without asking. Dust rose around his fingers. Arthur remained in his front room with the door open. He had cleared his work table, but had not removed his tools. Rick peered inside. Tenant comes with all this? The furniture and tools are his, Mara said. I mean, he's in place. He lives here. Rick smiled as though she had made a small semantic error. Right. He inspected the bathroom, tested windows, photographed the open kitchen wall, and spent less than 30 seconds looking at the roof from the backyard. How old is he asked when they returned upstairs. Who? The tenant. Why? Just looking at the lease horizon. The lease horizon is 4 years. His age doesn't change that. Rick held up one hand. I'm not suggesting anything. Sometimes older tenants are ready for a change. Assisted living, family, warmer climate. Mara thought of Arthur carrying the Calder chair through the cold because it had legs. He's not ready for a change. You'd be surprised what a relocation payment can accomplish. How much? That depends how motivated he is. I mean, how much would you pay him? Rick's smile remained, but something behind it stopped smiling. That conversation comes after acquisition. He made an offer that evening. It was lower than Lisa's lowest estimate and expired in 48 hours. Rick included a note saying the price reflected immediate roof replacement, tenancy complications, and uncertain access to full economic use. Arthur slipped a maintenance notice beneath Mara's front door the same night, though she still lived at Tasha's and only found it Sunday morning. The upstairs bathroom faucet dripped. The rear bedroom ceiling stain had expanded 2 inches after overnight rain. The kitchen cabinet was dry enough for replacement. He had signed it, Arthur Bell, tenant. Mara found him in the basement, labeling a jar of washers. You put this under the door. That's generally where notices go. You could have called. Written record is better. You've never sent Grandma a typed maintenance notice. You're not Evelyn, I'm aware. He screwed the lid onto the jar. Rick made an offer, Mara said. Arthur reached for another jar. Congratulations. It's terrible. Then you two have something in common. She held out her phone. He'd probably offer you money to leave. Arthur did not look at the screen. How much? He didn't say. Then he didn't offer. Would you consider it? His hands stopped. Mara felt instantly cruel, but taking back the question would be another kind of cruelty. Arthur placed the jar on the shelf. Lucille died in the front bedroom. I'm sorry. She hated that wallpaper. Said she'd recover just to tear it down. Then she didn't, and I left it up because grief makes bad decorators. Mara had noticed the faded leaves through the half-open door. She had assumed he liked them. Arthur continued arranging washers by size. I know where the floor lifts in winter, he said. I know which step catches the heel of my shoe. I know Evelyn put the kitchen outlet too close to the sink and argued with the electrician until he moved it 3 inches. None of that means I can't live somewhere else. But $575 doesn't rent a front closet now. There was no self-pity in his voice, just arithmetic. If I sold to someone who kept the lease, you can sell. That isn't what I asked. You keep asking what happens to me, so you can make your decision feel shared. Mara stared at him. Arthur met her eyes. It isn't shared. That doesn't make it wrong. Her phone rang before she could answer. Corinne's name filled the screen. Mara almost declined it. Then she saw the second call arrive immediately after the first ended. What happened? She answered. There's water coming through the ceiling at Linden. Where? First floor hallway. Scott's emergency number went to voicemail, and Vanessa keeps saying we should wait for the contractor. Is the water shut off? We can't find the main. Arthur's notebook says it's behind cage 3 in the basement. Arthur's face changed. Corinne said, What cage? Storage cage. The key sticks. Don't force it. How do you know? Arthur's records. There was a pause, followed by Vanessa's voice in the background. Ask her to send a picture of the page. Arthur shook his head once. It's not my notebook, Mara said. Then ask him, Corinne replied. Please. The ceiling is getting worse. Mara covered the phone. There are tenants under that water. I heard. Can you tell them where the shutoff is? I already did. They don't know which valve. Red handle on the vertical line, left of the old gas meter. Mara relayed it. Voices moved away from Corinne's phone. A door banged. Vanessa said something too distant to understand. Then Corinne cursed. What? The key won't turn. Lift the cage door while you turn it, Arthur said loudly. Corinne heard him. Arthur? No. What do you mean, no? I mean this is a telephone. Despite everything, Mara laughed. Arthur took the phone from her. Lift the right side of the cage. Turn the key slowly. If Vanessa forces it, make her pay for the locksmith herself. Vanessa's voice came closer. I can hear you. Good. Saves time. The lock opened. Arthur guided them past the gas meter and told them which valve to close. The sound on Corinne's end changed from panic to breathless relief. It's slowing, she said. Where's the leak? Arthur asked. Ceiling under 2A's bathroom. Call Darnell. Tell him stack 2, first floor. If it's the same branch, he'll bring the right fittings. Vanessa came on the line. Arthur, I'm sorry to call on a Sunday. You didn't. I know things between us have been... Walter's heat fixed. A pause. Scott sent someone, Vanessa said. They replaced the vent. Did they shim the radiator? I don't know. Then you paid somebody not to listen. Vanessa's voice sharpened. I'm trying to thank you. Call Darnell. He handed the phone back to Mara and went upstairs. Corinne stayed on the line. He still hates us. He helped. That's not the same as forgiveness. No. In the background, Vanessa was already calling Darnell. Corinne lowered her voice. Scott's company was supposed to take over yesterday. They charged an emergency setup fee. Then call the emergency number again. We did. What did they say? That the building isn't fully entered into their vendor system yet. Mara looked up the basement stairs, where Arthur's boots had disappeared. Maybe don't sign anything else until the building makes it into the system. Too late, Corinne said. Darnell reached Linden Place within 40 minutes. The leak came from an old joint behind 2A's bathroom wall. Arthur's location note had been correct, saving enough search time that Darnell finished before dark. Vanessa sent Mara a message afterward. Please thank him. We will pay for his consultation. Mara showed Arthur when she found him in the upstairs rear room, measuring the darkened ceiling stain. Tell her to put it toward Darnell's bill. She wants to pay you. She wants a receipt that says she isn't guilty. Maybe she wants to do the right thing. Then she can start somewhere that costs more. Mara leaned against the doorframe. I'm rejecting Rick's offer. Arthur kept the tape measure extended. Too low? Yes, it was true. It simply wasn't all of the truth. I'm leaving the listing up, she added. Your house. Could you stop saying things like that? Which part is incorrect? She took the roofing estimates from her bag. The contractor you marked talks too much but honest will replace the rear section and patch the front. He'll split the payment into 3 parts. Arthur let the tape snap back too quickly. It caught his finger. That's not a full roof. It buys time. Time costs more if you buy it in pieces. I don't have full roof money. Then don't spend what you have because of me. I'm not. He looked at her. Mara put the lowest estimate on the windowsill. Tasha has to raise my rent. Once the rear roof is safe and the ceiling is repaired, I can move upstairs. Arthur's expression did not soften. It became harder to read. You'd live here? It came with owner's rooms. They need work. I'm learning. The heat upstairs sticks. You can show me. The front window leaks. You can show me. Those stairs are worse when you're carrying laundry. I'm excellent at laundry. Arthur glanced around the water-stained room, as if seeing not damage but an intrusion he had not prepared for. When? He asked. Roof work starts in 3 weeks. That's not what I asked. Mara understood. She looked at the tape measure in his unsteady hand, the buckets beneath Grandma's ceiling, and the estimate that would empty most of her savings without solving everything. I don't know how long I'm staying, she said. Arthur nodded once. Good, he said. Now we're both waiting. The roofers arrived at 7:12 on a Monday morning and began removing the rear shingles with the enthusiasm of men settling an old argument. Mara stood upstairs beneath the pounding, holding a trash bag open while bits of plaster dropped from the back room ceiling. Arthur appeared at the door, wearing ear protectors around his neck. You're supposed to wait until they finish before you clean. If I wait, the dust wins. Dust always wins. He handed her a pair of safety glasses. She put them on. How do I look? Like someone who still has both eyes? That good? He crossed to the window and looked out at the roofer's truck. The contractor, Calvin Brooks, was the one Arthur had described as honest and talkative. He had spent 20 minutes that morning explaining the history of asphalt shingles before lifting a single tool. Calvin's crew stripped the rear roof to the decking. Some sections came up dark and soft enough to crumble at the edges. Arthur watched each sheet of plywood carried through the yard, then went outside to inspect it. He really is making them show me everything, Mara said. He told you he would, Calvin called from the ladder. That man trusts roofing contractors the way cats trust bathtubs. I trust cats, Arthur said. By noon, the back room was bright through gaps where rotten wood had been removed. Blue sky appeared between rafters. Mara stood beneath it and felt briefly as though the house had opened its mouth. Then Calvin found damage along the shared edge with the neighboring roof. It doesn't change my number, he told her. I included 2 sheets for surprise. This is the surprise. Only one? Don't invite another. Arthur inspected the exposed joist and agreed it could remain. He said nothing approving about Calvin until the contractor went outside. He knows what he's doing, Mara said. He knows enough to hide it behind conversation. The work lasted 4 days. Mara spent mornings at Weller Street, afternoons and evenings at the hospital, then returned to Tasha's too tired to remove the fine gray dust from her hair. Each day produced a new expense small enough to seem rude: replacement flashing, a damaged vent collar, 2 lengths of gutter, an extra disposal fee because wet roofing weighed more. On Thursday, she transferred the second payment from savings. The balance on the screen was lower than her nursing school deposit had been. She stared at it until Arthur set a mug beside her phone. Coffee won't change the number, she said. Neither will staring. Do you have a phrase like that for everything? Only things people do, often? She took a drink. His coffee had improved, or she had grown tired enough to stop objecting. Calvin finished the rear roof, patched the front section, and made Mara climb halfway up the ladder to see the repaired flashing. I hate this, she said, gripping the rung. Good, he replied from above. People who enjoy ladders become roofers or statistics. The roof looked ordinary when it was done. No shining transformation, no visible proof of what it had cost. Just dark shingles lying flat beneath a colorless sky. Arthur stood on the sidewalk with his hands in his jacket pockets. Front patch might give you a year, Calvin said. Might give you 3. It needs replacing eventually. Mara nodded. Eventually is a date, Arthur said. Write one down. Calvin pointed at him. That's why nobody invites you to weddings. After the truck left, Mara wrote, Front roof, reassess. September on the blank April page of Evelyn's old kitchen calendar. Arthur crossed out September and wrote August. She did not argue. The upstairs ceiling repair took another week, because Mara insisted on doing the simple parts herself. Arthur showed her how to test whether the remaining plaster was sound, then made her tap every section while he listened. "That one's hollow," she said. "No, it sounds hollow. It sounds thinner. Different problem. How can you tell? Do it for 20 years. Can you give me an answer that fits my schedule?" "No." He made her sign out his tools in a small green notebook. "I own the house," she reminded him. "You don't own the putty knife." She wrote Mara, putty knife, utility knife, small pry bar, and added date unknown. Arthur turned the notebook around and wrote the date beneath it. When Mara removed the damaged ceiling edge too aggressively and brought down a larger piece than intended, he did not say "I told you so." He looked at the debris on the tarp and said, "Now you know where it stops." It was strangely worse. Tasha arrived on moving day with her Corolla, 2 rolls of trash bags, and a box of labels. "You labeled the labels," Mara said. "Top, side, fragile, room. You can't build a system during a crisis. This is 6 boxes and a lamp. Every collapse begins with somebody underestimating a lamp." Arthur watched from the front steps as they carried Mara's dresser drawers inside one at a time. "This is Tasha," Mara told him. "She owns the room I'm escaping." "I'm raising her rent," Tasha said. "I'm the villain." Arthur nodded. "Thought it might be the lamp." Tasha stared at him, then laughed so hard she nearly dropped a box of shoes. The front bedroom was dry, though a brown watermark remained near the ceiling from the old leak. Mara put her bed beneath the opposite wall. The blue velvet settee stayed covered in the middle room, along with most of Evelyn's boxes. She moved the sewing cabinet beside the window and stacked her catalogs on top of it. Arthur noticed. "You sew?" "No." "Then that's appropriate. They're nursing school catalogs." "I can read. I postponed. I didn't ask." She looked at him. "Most people do. Most people want answers they can use to give advice." "What do you want?" "To know if that dresser blocks the outlet." It did. He helped her move it 3 inches left. By late afternoon, Tasha had labeled the upstairs bathroom cabinet, the kitchen shelf Mara would use, and the breaker box in the basement. Arthur objected to her label reading, "Mystery switch, do not touch." "It controls the back exterior light," he said. "Then why didn't it come on?" Tasha asked. "Bulb's out." She replaced the label with backlight, bulb out, which seemed to satisfy both of them. Corinne arrived carrying 2 pizzas and a plastic bag of work gloves. "I didn't know what kind," she said, "so I bought medium and large." Arthur opened the pizza boxes. "No small? Do you need small?" "No. I'm identifying a weakness in your system." Corinne looked at Mara. "Is he always like this?" "He improves after coffee." "I do not." They ate in Arthur's kitchen because the upstairs rooms had no table. Corinne sat carefully on a chair missing 1 decorative spindle, while Arthur stood at the counter and folded his slice in half. For several minutes, conversation stayed safely on the roof, the hospital, and the salon employee who had accidentally dyed a client's towel purple. Then Corinne wiped sauce from her thumb and said, "Denise got a rent notice." Arthur stopped chewing. Mara put down her slice. "How much?" 8% at renewal. You said Scott recommended more. He did. We lowered it. Did Denise agree? It's a notice, not a negotiation. Arthur closed the pizza box over the remaining slices. Corinne looked at him. "What? Nothing?" "You do nothing," very loudly. "Evelyn raised Denise's rent 4 times in 17 years. That's probably why it's under market. She paid on the 1st every month, looked after the lobby plants, called when she smelled gas before anybody else did. We're not throwing her out. You're charging her for being reliable." Corinne's face reddened. "The building has expenses. We've already had the plumbing repair. Harbor has fees. Insurance went up." "Then why hire Harbor?" Mara asked. "Because Vanessa and I can't answer emergency calls every day." "How many emergencies did you have before Harbor?" "I don't know. Grandma handled them." "Arthur handled them," Mara said. Corinne pushed her plate away. "This is what I mean. Every time I come here, there's some new version where you 2 did everything, and Vanessa and I were useless." "I didn't say you were useless. You don't have to. You inherited the moral high ground with the house." Arthur left the kitchen. The silence he took with him made the room feel larger. Mara lowered her voice. "You signed the rent notice." "Yes." "Did you think it was right?" I thought it was less wrong than Vanessa's number. That isn't an answer. Apparently nobody in this family gives answers you approve of. Corinne stood and carried her plate to the sink. I came to help you move, and I'm glad. You haven't said that. You arrived with a rent increase. I arrived with pizza. You brought both. Corinne gripped the edge of the sink. Her shoulders lifted, then fell. I don't know how to do this, she said. For once the sentence contained no invitation for Mara to rescue her. It was simply true. Mara looked at the unopened bag of gloves. The back room needs scraping before I can prime it, she said. Corinne turned around. It's dirty, Mara added. Your hair will look terrible. My hair never looks terrible. Arthur has opinions. Arthur can keep them. From the front room, he called, unlikely. They spent the next 2 hours upstairs. Mara showed Corinne how to test the plaster, though she had learned only days earlier. Corinne scraped too cautiously at first, then too hard, sending a powdery chunk onto her shoulder. Don't laugh, she warned. Mara was already laughing. Corinne chased her across the room with the brush, both of them coughing through dust masks. For a few minutes they were adults only technically, shoving each other with their hips and accusing each other of sabotage. Then Corinne's scraper uncovered a line of pale yellow paint beneath the gray. Grandma's old kitchen was this color, she said. Mara stopped. You remember? Corinne asked. The curtains had lemons. Vanessa hated them. Vanessa said they looked diseased. They smiled at the wall. Corinne sat on the floor. Dust coated the knees of her black pants. Vanessa's scared. Of what? The building's losing money. Everything losing money. Eric took most of their savings when they sold the house. Mara knew the divorce had been bad. She had not known how bad. She thinks if the apartments make enough, nobody can decide whether she's safe again, Corinne said. That's not an excuse. No. But it's not just greed. Mara scraped at the yellow paint. Why did you sign? Because she asked if I trusted her. And you said yes. I said I trusted her more than Scott. That is not the same thing. I know that now. Downstairs, a tool hit the floor. The sound was small but sharp. Mara and Corinne looked at each other, then hurried down. Arthur stood beside his work table. A chisel lay near his shoe. On the table, a walnut cabinet door showed a fresh gouge along one edge. I dropped it, he said before they asked. His right hand trembled hard enough that he closed it into a fist. Mara picked up the chisel. Arthur took it from her too quickly. Don't touch the edge. Corinne looked at the damaged wood. Can it be fixed? Yes. Arthur turned the cabinet door face down. Mara had seen that answer before. Not in him. In Evelyn, every time Mara asked whether she was tired, frightened, in pain, Arthur gathered the tools into their tray. We're done for today, he said. It was his front room, his work, his hand. Mara knew better than to tell him otherwise. She also knew what silence could cost when everybody agreed to protect it. Okay, she said. Tomorrow you can show me how. Arthur did not show her the next morning. The walnut cabinet door stood beneath a canvas cover on his work table. The chisel tray had been put away. Arthur sat by the front window reading the newspaper, with both hands around his coffee mug. Mara came downstairs in her uniform. What time? For what? The repair. Thought you worked. I do. What time tonight? It's my job. You said it could be fixed. It can. Then show me. Arthur folded the newspaper along an existing crease. You don't know enough. That has not stopped you from assigning me plaster. Plaster doesn't have grain. Neither do you before coffee. He looked at her mug. She looked down. This is coffee. That's milk with a troubling past. Mara left for work without winning. The cabinet door remained covered when she returned. Arthur was in the kitchen cutting carrots into a pot of stew, his right hand steady only while the knife rested against the board. You have a doctor? Mara asked. He cut another carrot. That was not an offer to diagnose you. Good. Laundry folded your medical license? Arthur? Yes. You have one? Dr. Patel. She has diplomas, a stethoscope, and poor time management. What does she say? She says essential tremor. Mara waited. That's the diagnosis, he said. Not a description of my personality. Is there treatment? There are pills. The first made me dizzy. The second made me tired. Being tired made me more likely to drop things, which felt like medicine showing off. When was your last appointment? He pushed the chopped carrots into the pot. You planning to raise my rent if I answer wrong? No. Then April. It was already early March. That's soon. That's how calendars work. Mara leaned against the counter. You should have told me. Why? So? I wouldn't hand you tools when your hand was shaking. That's exactly why. The knife came down too hard on the final carrot. Arthur set it aside. I know what my hand does, he said. I don't need everybody else deciding what I can hold. I wasn't deciding. You were on your way. Mara thought of the typed maintenance notice, the sheet over the repaired Calder chair, and Arthur's refusal to give her fear anything she could use. Fine, she said. You hold the tools. I'll hold the cabinet door. That's backwards. Then you'd better show me. After dinner, he removed the canvas. The gouge ran across one corner where the chisel had skated away from the grain. It was shallow, but on the polished walnut it looked white and raw. You can sand it out? Mara asked. Not without changing the edge. Fill it? Then it'll look filled. What's wrong with looking repaired? Arthur stared at the door. Mara realized she had said more than she intended. He took a shallow tray from a shelf and showed her how to collect fine walnut dust from a sanding block. They mixed the dust with glue, pressed it into the gouge, and let it set. Arthur explained color matching, grain direction, and why impatience became visible under finish. His hand shook when he held the small scraper. He placed it down. You do it, he said. Mara did not look at him. Like this? Lower angle. You're shaving the fill, not punishing it. She adjusted. Slower. At this speed, the tree will grow back. Tree did better work. She scraped until the fill sat nearly level, then sanded with paper so fine it felt smooth against her fingertip. Arthur inspected the edge beneath the work lamp. Again, he said. It took 4 attempts before he nodded. The repair did not disappear. A thin, dark line remained where the gouge had been, but the edge looked deliberate again. Whose is it? Mara asked. Mrs. Epps. Lives near Patterson Park. Kitchen cabinet from her mother's house. She pays you to repair doors? She pays me to repair what the man she hired ruined. How much? Arthur named a price. That's too low. She's been coming here 15 years. So she gets a discount. She gets the price. You sound like Grandma. I'm going upstairs. You live down here. Then you go upstairs. Mrs. Epps arrived 2 evenings later, wearing a red raincoat and carrying a tin of butter cookies. She examined the repaired corner, ran one thumb along the grain, and smiled. Can't hardly see it. You can see it, Arthur said. I said hardly. Mara handed her the cabinet door, while Arthur wrote the payment in a ledger. His handwriting wavered on the final number. Mrs. Epps noticed. She said nothing. Instead, she asked Mara whether she was Arthur's apprentice. No, they answered together. Mrs. Epps laughed. That's how it starts. After she left, Mara counted the cash and wrote a receipt because Arthur's carbon book had run out. You need a better system, she said. I have a system. You keep customer phone numbers on loose paper. I know where the paper is. Mrs. Epps called 3 times because your voicemail was full. She enjoys calling. She also paid $20 more than you charged. Arthur looked at the bills. Then I owe her 20. She said it was for rush work. It took 6 days. She called that rush. He took the extra money and placed it in a coffee tin marked glue. Mara suspected the tin contained no glue. The front room changed by increments. Mara cleared one shelf for active orders, wrote customer names on masking tape, and put a cheap calendar beside the workbench. Arthur objected to every change, then corrected her spelling on the labels. A woman from Mara's hospital shift brought in a dining chair with a cracked stretcher. Arthur quoted the repair while Mara recorded the phone number and deposit. When the woman left, he asked why Mara had not told him she was bringing business. I didn't. She heard me complaining about you. Good advertising. The money did not solve the roof. It paid for supplies, a utility bill, and part of the replacement cabinet floor in Arthur's kitchen. Still, when Mara calculated the house expenses one Sunday night, the numbers no longer sat alone. There was a line for repair income, small but real. Her listing remained active. 2 buyers asked for showings. One canceled after reading the lease. The other walked through, complimented the brick, and offered less than Rick. Mara declined. Lisa called afterward. You don't have to keep rejecting people just because they notice the same problems you notice. I know. Do you still want to sell? I still want offers. That isn't quite the same. No. Lisa did not press. Tell me when it changes. At Calder Court, Denise gave notice that she would leave at the end of her lease. Corinne told Mara while standing in Weller's middle room, painting over the gray wall where they had exposed the old yellow. She had returned twice to help without bringing pizza or an apology. Arthur had begun leaving the proper tools on the stairs before she arrived. She found a smaller place near her sister, Corinne said. Because of the rent increase? She said she was thinking about moving anyway. Were those her words or Vanessa's? Corinne rolled paint over one corner. Both. Mara worked along the baseboard with a brush. Did you offer to withdraw it? Vanessa says we can't treat one tenant differently. Grandma did. Grandma had Arthur fixing things for half price and leases that look like personal letters. We can't run buildings like that. Are you running them now? Corinne stopped painting. Mara regretted it before the silence formed. Harbor lost Walter's second maintenance request, Corinne said, and they sent a late notice to a tenant who paid on time. So, fire them. There's a termination fee. How much? Enough that Vanessa says we should give them another quarter, Vanessa says. I signed too. Corinne returned the roller to the tray. You keep saying her name like I wasn't in the room. Were you? The roller handle struck the tray with a sharp clack. Corinne took off her gloves. I came here to help. You are helping. No. I'm earning the right to have you speak to me without that look. What look? The one Grandma used when she'd already decided you disappointed her. Mara felt the brush go still in her hand. Corinne wiped yellow paint from her wrist. Vanessa was right about one thing. You got her time. You also got very good at sounding like her. She left before the wall was finished. Arthur came upstairs carrying 2 mugs. He looked at the open paint can, the abandoned roller, and Mara's face. What did you say? He asked. Why do you assume it was me? Corinne said goodnight to me like she wanted witnesses. Mara accepted a mug. Do I sound like Grandma? Yes. She waited for qualification. Arthur drank his coffee. That's all? You asked one question. Do I make people feel like they've already failed? Yes. The answer hurt worse for arriving without anger. Grandma made me feel useful, Mara said. Sometimes. She trusted me. Sometimes. What is that supposed to mean? Arthur looked at the unfinished wall. Evelyn trusted people most when they were doing what she wanted. A weather alert sounded on Mara's phone before she could answer. Heavy rain would turn to wet snow overnight. High winds were expected along the harbor and through central Baltimore. Arthur read the alert over her shoulder. Calvin checked the front patch, she said. He patched what he could see. You told me it was sound enough. I said it might hold. That's comforting. Comfort doesn't improve a roof. The rain began before midnight. It tapped the front window, then struck harder, driven sideways by wind. Mara put a towel along the sill and checked the ceiling stain. It remained dry. At 2, sleet rattled against the glass. At 3:17, a cracking sound woke her. Mara sat up. For a moment, everything was still. Then plaster dust drifted from the front corner of the ceiling. She threw back the blankets. Arthur? The ceiling bowed with a low wooden groan. Arthur shouted from the stairs as Mara reached the doorway. The first section came down behind her. Plaster, blackened wood, wet insulation, and a sheet of icy water that struck the bed hard enough to knock the lamp from the table. The roof did not disappear. It folded inward at one rotten edge, opening a jagged gap to the storm. Snow blew into Grandma's front room. Arthur grabbed Mara's arm and pulled her onto the landing as another piece broke loose. For several seconds they stood barefoot in the dark, listening to water pour through the house. Then Arthur looked at her. You hurt? Mara shook her head. Downstairs, a smoke alarm began shrieking. Arthur released her arm and reached for the basement key. Good, he said. Now panic can wait. Mara followed him down the stairs while the alarm screamed overhead. Breaker first, Arthur said. Which one? Main panel. Basement. Water ran along the upstairs hall and began dripping through the entry ceiling. Mara unlocked the basement door with hands that would not stop slipping off the key. Arthur went ahead of her, moving faster than she had seen him move, one hand tight around the railing. At the panel, he pointed. Main. Mara pulled the switch. The house went dark. The alarm died mid-shriek. Wind pressed against the walls. Somewhere above them, loose material scraped across the roof with a sound like furniture dragging. Water main? She asked. Leave it. This isn't plumbing. What do we do? Keep the damage upstairs. They carried tarps, buckets, and every large plastic container they could find. Arthur had a stack of old towels in the basement. Mara did not ask why. They spread a tarp across the landing and pushed its edges beneath the upstairs doors, trying to direct the water into tubs instead of down through the ceiling. The front bedroom was too dangerous to enter. Mara could see her mattress beneath plaster and wet insulation. One corner of the bed had disappeared under debris. Snow landed on Evelyn's black coat, where it hung from the closet door. "My phone," Mara said. "Where?" "Nightstand. Leave it. I need to call Calvin. You need to stay under the ceiling that's still attached," Arthur called from his phone. Calvin answered on the fourth ring, sounding awake enough to be angry at the weather. He asked questions about the opening, the slope, and whether the rafters had shifted. "I can't tell without going in," Arthur said. "Don't," Calvin replied so loudly Mara heard him. "I'll come as soon as the wind drops. Not before. Can you tarp it? In this wind, I can die near it." Arthur said he understood. They worked until dawn using flashlights. The water stopped crossing the landing after they wedged one tarp beneath a strip of wood and angled it into a storage tote. Arthur's front room stayed dry except for a line of drips in the entry. Mara moved the radio away from the wall and covered the work table. At 5:30, they sat in his kitchen with no heat and no coffee. Arthur wore his coat over his pajamas. Mara had pulled on work pants and 2 sweaters from a box upstairs. Her socks were wet. "You should go to Tasha's," Arthur said. "What about you?" "I live downstairs. The power's off. I've survived daylight. The furnace is off. I own socks. You own 1 pair at a time." Arthur looked at her feet. "You're wearing mine." Mara looked down. The thick gray socks had appeared beside her while she changed. They came halfway up her calves. "I thought they were Grandma's." "Evelyn's feet weren't that ugly." Mara laughed, then covered her face with both hands. The laugh turned without warning. Her shoulders shook. She pressed her palms against her eyes as if she could hold everything inside by force. Arthur stood, opened a cabinet, and took out a paper napkin. "That's what you have?" she asked through her hands. "It's clean." She accepted it. The thin paper tore against her wet face. Arthur put the entire napkin holder on the table. Calvin arrived after 8, when the sleet softened to rain. He climbed only high enough to inspect from the ladder, then went upstairs with Arthur and Mara standing behind the yellow tape he stretched across the bedroom doorway. The patched shingles had held. The decking beside them had not. Water had worked beneath an older seam near the party wall, and the weight of wet snow had broken a rotted section Calvin had not exposed during the rear work. "I should have caught it," he said. "You patched the surface," Arthur replied. "Nobody paid you to open the front." Calvin looked at Mara. "I can cover it once the wind drops another 10 miles an hour. Temporary only. Framing needs sistering, decking replaced, interior cleared, full front section now. No more patches." He wrote no estimate. He did not need to. Mara called out of work. Tasha arrived with coffee, dry socks, and 2 charging batteries. She stood in the entry looking up at the dripping ceiling. "I withdraw every joke I made about the lamp," she said. Mara took a coffee. "The lamp is dead. I'll send flowers." Corinne came before noon in Ceylon clothes and rain boots carrying storage bins. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes later with contractor trash bags, work gloves, and a face arranged for emergencies. Nobody discussed the unfinished argument over the yellow wall. They moved what could be saved from the upstairs. The nursing catalogs were damp along one edge. The sewing cabinet had swollen at the base. Grandma's photographs, still in their boxes, were dry because Mara had stacked them against an interior wall. Her bed was ruined. Vanessa stood in the doorway after Calvin declared the room safe enough for brief entry. She looked at the plaster, insulation, and gray sky visible through the covered gap. "This house is going to eat everything you have," she said. "Helpful," Corinne muttered. "It's true." Mara carried a box to the middle room. "I know. You can't live here? I'm noticing." Vanessa followed her. "Come stay at my place tonight." It was the first offer she had made without being asked. Mara almost said no, from habit. "Thank you," she said instead. "I might." Vanessa nodded, surprised by acceptance. Then her gaze dropped to the damp nursing catalogs. "How much did you put into the roof?" Mara told her. Vanessa sat on the edge of the covered settee. Dust darkened the cream coat she had worn to the will meeting. "Oh, Mara." "Don't. I'm not judging you. You say that a lot. Because you think everybody is." Mara carried the catalogs into the dry back room and laid them open on the floor. Vanessa lowered her voice. "You need to sell now. Lisa still has it listed. Not at that price. Take it down, clear the debris, relist as is. With Arthur downstairs, the lease transfers, that makes it sound so simple. It is simple legally. Nothing is simple just because you add legally. Vanessa pressed her fingertips against her forehead. I can help. Mara turned. I have access to the Calder account, Vanessa said. I can advance enough to stabilize the roof and cover your deductible. You'd use building money? Not permanently. You'd repay it at closing. That account belongs to you and Corinne. So, Grandma left it to you. Vanessa hesitated. The offer changed shape before Mara's eyes. We could treat the house as part of the shared estate, Vanessa said. The way it should have been. What does that mean? You sell. After repair costs and repayment, we divide the net proceeds 3 ways. Mara stared at her. It would solve the immediate problem, Vanessa continued. You can't pay for this. I can. Because you got the apartments. Because Corinne and I got income-producing properties and you got something Grandma may not have understood the condition of. She knew about the roof. She was confused, Mara. You know that better than anyone. She mistook you for Mom, near the end. The will was signed 6 months before. She knew our names 6 months before, most days. Mara felt the room contract around them. Vanessa stood. I'm not saying invalidate everything. Of course not. You like your part. I'm saying the division wasn't equal. You said it was fair in Keene's office. I was trying not to humiliate you. The words landed cleanly. In the hall, a floorboard creaked. Arthur stood near the top of the stairs, holding an empty plastic bin. His face showed nothing. How long have you been there? Mara asked. Long enough to know the bin's not needed. He turned and went down. Vanessa exhaled. I'm sorry he heard, but this is a family decision. He lives here. He rents here. That doesn't make him deaf. Corinne appeared on the landing. Calvin needs Mara outside. Vanessa looked at her. Did you hear? Enough. And? Corinne shifted the stack of towels in her arms. The Calder account isn't yours to offer without me. I know. I was going to ask. You offered first. I'm trying to keep the roof from falling farther. Corinne looked at Mara. Do you want to sell? Mara looked at the open catalogs drying on the floor, their pages curling at the corners. She thought of her checking balance. Tasha's rent. Calvin refusing to write a number until she was sitting down. Yes, she said. Vanessa relaxed. The sound of it made Mara add, I think so. That was enough for Arthur. By evening, Calvin had covered the opening with a storm tarp and braced the damaged edge from inside. The electricity could be restored downstairs, but the upstairs circuit remained off. Mara planned to sleep on Vanessa's sofa. She found Arthur in the front room, packing hand tools into his dented metal box. What are you doing? Making space. For what? Inspection. Buyers like empty rooms. They're your rooms. For 4 more years, according to paper. He closed the toolbox. I didn't agree to Vanessa's plan. You said yes. I said, I think so. Buyers don't pay extra for hesitation. Mara stepped between him and the work table. Stop. Arthur's hand tightened around the toolbox handle. You can't pack every time I get scared, she said. I'm not packing everything. Fine. You can't pack 1 drawer every time. I'm moving tools. Where? Darnell has room in his shop. For your tools or you. My tools. And you'll sit here with nothing to do while people walk through and calculate your lease horizon? His jaw shifted. Mara's anger rose too quickly, fueled by cold exhaustion and the humiliation still burning from upstairs. I resent this, she said. Arthur looked at her. I resent that everybody gets to measure whether I'm good by what I give up. Vanessa got 6 apartments and calls it planning. Corinne signs rent increases and gets to be confused. I spend my savings on a roof and 1 piece falls in. And somehow, if I sell, I'm the person who abandoned you. I didn't say that. You don't have to. You cover the chair. You type Tenant under your name. You carry tools out like I've already put you on the street. Arthur set the toolbox on the floor. Mara's voice broke, but she kept going. I don't want to lose school again to prove I have a heart. I don't want to be useful every minute, and I don't want this house if keeping it means becoming grandma. The rain tapped against the front window. Arthur sat in the work chair. For once, he looked his age. Evelyn didn't choose you because you were kind, he said. Mara flinched. She chose you because you stayed when staying got unpleasant. There's a difference. That doesn't make it better. No, she thought it did. He looked at his trembling hand and pressed it flat against his knee. When she fell on those stairs, she said you would give away your last dollar if somebody convinced you leaving cost more than staying. She was proud of that. Then she was ashamed she'd used it. Mara said nothing. She left you the house because she trusted you with people, Arthur continued. But Evelyn trusted like a landlord. She gave responsibility first and asked about the price after. Then, this was another job. Maybe. The answer hurt, because he did not protect Evelyn from it. Arthur nudged the toolbox with his shoe. You don't owe me your future, he said. And I don't owe you a performance where I pretend I'm not afraid. Mara wiped her face with her sleeve. What are we supposed to do with that? Tell the truth before we start carrying furniture. She sat on the edge of the work table. Arthur opened the toolbox again and removed the screwdriver tray. Are you staying? She asked. Tonight? Yes. It's raining. That isn't an answer. He placed the tray back in its drawer. I know, he said. Mara slept on Vanessa's sofa beneath a knitted blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and an unfamiliar man's cologne. She did not ask. Vanessa's apartment was neat in the careful way of a recently divided life. One wineglass stood in the drying rack. One toothbrush sat beside the sink. The framed wedding photographs were gone, but pale rectangles remained on the wall where sunlight had faded everything around them. At 6, Vanessa came into the living room wearing a robe and carrying 2 mugs. You still take too much sugar? Only when people are watching. Vanessa set 1 mug on the table. I didn't sleep. Your sofa did. You snore. I was breathing through plaster. They sat without looking at each other. Morning light made the room feel exposed. Vanessa tucked 1 foot beneath her. I shouldn't have said Grandma was confused. She was confused sometimes. Not about the will? I don't know. That answer surprised both of them. Vanessa wrapped her hands around her mug. My offer stands. No, you haven't seen the final repair number. No Calder money. No splitting the house. So, you're keeping it? I didn't say that. What are you saying? That I'm not letting you turn help into a purchase. Vanessa's expression cooled. I was trying to make it fair. You were trying to make my emergency profitable. That is not fair. There's the word again. Vanessa stood and carried her untouched coffee to the kitchen. Fine. Figure it out yourself. Mara followed. That's what you always say after offering the kind of help you control. And you only accept help if it arrives as admiration. The sentence stopped Mara beside the island. Vanessa opened the refrigerator, stared inside, and closed it without taking anything. I offered you a place to sleep, she said. No conditions. You barely said thank you. I did say thank you. You said it like I'd handed you a bus schedule. Mara looked toward the sofa, where Vanessa had left a clean towel, an unopened toothbrush, and a folded t-shirt for her. Thank you, she said again. Vanessa's shoulders dropped slightly. I'm still not dividing the house. I heard you. And I'm paying for the toothbrush. Now you're being annoying on purpose. That's how I express gratitude. Vanessa almost smiled. It vanished quickly, but Mara saw it. The insurance inspector came to Weller Street that afternoon. He photographed the broken decking, measured the opening, and asked about the earlier roof work. Calvin stood beside Mara and answered plainly. The storm damage qualified for some coverage. The rot did not. Cleanup was partly covered. Replacement of the failed section was not fully covered because the wood had deteriorated before the storm. The deductible consumed most of the useful number. It helps, Calvin said after the inspector left. It helps the way a cup helps a house fire. A cup's useful if the fire's in the cup. Arthur stood in the entry. There he goes, talking. Calvin removed his cap and scratched his head. I can split what's left into 4 payments. You already split the last job, Mara said, and you paid everyone when you said. Because I emptied my savings, didn't ask where it came from. I can't promise money I don't have. I'm not asking for a promise. I'm telling you terms I can offer, Arthur said. Calvin's bad at kindness, makes it sound like invoicing. It is invoicing, Calvin replied. I have payroll. Mara looked at the estimate. 4 payments were still 4 impossible numbers, only arranged more politely. What has to happen first? She asked. Calvin pointed upstairs. Debris out. Damaged framing braced, then sistered. Decking and roof closed. Interior ceiling can wait. Your bedroom can't. Can we do the debris? Yes, if you follow instructions and don't try to save insulation, because it looks expensive. It does look expensive. It also looks wet. Arthur took the estimate from Mara. Darnell has a dump trailer. Darnell is a plumber, she said. Plumbers own things. Why? So other people can borrow them. For the first time since the collapse, the work separated into tasks instead of one enormous failure. Mara called Lisa and paused the listing. Paused or withdrawn? Lisa asked. Paused. I can do that. You think I'm making a mistake? I think you're not ready to sell. That's different. Darnell brought the trailer on Wednesday and charged only the disposal fee, provided Mara helped load. Calvin's crew secured the damaged framing. Tasha arrived after a night shift, wearing old scrubs, and announced she had come to destroy things therapeutically. Corinne appeared with gloves in all 3 sizes. She found Mara upstairs pulling wet lath from a pile. I came to finish the wall, Corinne said. The wall is not currently our biggest wall problem, I noticed. They worked beside each other for an hour before Corinne spoke again. I'm sorry I said you sounded like Grandma. You were right. That doesn't make it kind. No. Corinne tugged a nail from a strip of wood. You were right too. About what? Harbor. Vanessa finally called the emergency line from a different number. They answered because they thought she was a prospective client. Mara stopped working. That would be funny if tenants weren't paying for it, Corinne added. We're terminating them. The fee? We'll owe it. Vanessa agreed. She used words I won't repeat near structural damage. Mara returned to the debris. What are you going to do instead? That's why I'm here. No, I didn't ask yet. You brought the asking face. What does the asking face look like? Like you're sorry in advance. Corinne sat back on her heels. We need Arthur's records. They're not mine. We need his help. That's also not mine. Can you ask him to meet with us? You can ask him. He won't answer my calls. Come downstairs. Arthur was in the front room fitting a clamp around a dining chair stretcher. His right hand trembled, but the jig held the pieces steady while he tightened it with his left. Corinne stood in the doorway. Arthur? No, I haven't asked. Better system. She glanced at Mara, who stayed in the hall. Can we talk about Calder and Linden? Arthur checked the joint alignment. You can. We're ending the contract with Harbor. Congratulations. We need to understand the buildings before we hire anyone else. That sounds sensible. Can we use your notebooks? No. Corinne inhaled. Can we pay you to walk us through them? Arthur looked up. We'd pay a consulting rate, she continued. A real one, not the old arrangement. You set the scope. We'll put it in writing. Whose idea? Mine. Arthur looked at Mara. She asked me to ask you, Mara said. I didn't. Corinne nodded. She made me do the scary part myself. Cruel woman. I know. Arthur released the clamp and retightened it by a quarter turn. Both sisters attend. Vanessa will? Did she say that? She will after I threaten her. No threats. If she won't come, answers no. Corinne's mouth tightened. She owes the tenants a working building whether she likes you or not. Correct. So why make them depend on her apology? I didn't ask for one. What are you asking for? Attendance. The distinction sat there. Arthur wiped glue from the joint. You both learned the shutoffs, service schedule, tenant history, vendor numbers. You make your own copies, not Mara, not me. What will you do? Answer questions. Will you come to the buildings? One walk through each. After that, stairs decide. Corinne heard what he had not said about his hand and did not look at it. What rate? She asked. Arthur named one lower than Scott's. Mara said. Higher. He frowned. You're undercharging. It's my rate. You'll spend hours preparing. Stay out of it. Corinne looked between them. Should I leave while management negotiates with labor? Arthur pointed toward the hallway. Yes. She went into the kitchen, laughing under her breath. Mara lowered her voice. If they want professional help, charge professionally. I don't need you pricing me. You put $20 in a glue tin. That's unrelated. You worked for Grandma at half price until everybody forgot it was work. I didn't forget. They did. Arthur's jaw set. Mara took the customer calendar from beside the workbench. Mrs. Epps paid extra. Geraldine from the hospital referred another person. You have 3 jobs waiting, and you're still quoting like the electricity is free. Customers go elsewhere when prices rise. Some will. You sound pleased. I sound honest. Arthur looked toward the kitchen, where Corinne was opening and closing cabinets in search of coffee. What's your fee? He asked. For what? Scheduling, receipts, insulting the owner? I am the owner of the house, not the work. The words mattered more than either of them acknowledged. Mara looked at the active orders on the shelf. 10%. Arthur barked a laugh. 5, 8, and I answer the phone. 6, and you stop calling glue a supply category. There are kinds. 7, and we buy a receipt book. Arthur considered. 6 and coffee. Who makes it? Depends whether you want 7. They settled on 6. Corinne returned with 3 mugs and a plate of butter cookies Mrs. Epps had left behind. Did capitalism survive? Barely, Mara said. Arthur opened one of the black notebooks, but did not hand it over. Thursday, he told Corinne, 6 o'clock. Here first. Why here? Because you start with the tenants. I thought we were starting with the buildings. Arthur turned to a blank page and wrote Calder Court at the top. Buildings don't call about the heat, he said. Vanessa arrived Thursday at 6:27, still wearing office clothes and carrying her impatience like a second handbag. I had to leave a client meeting. Arthur looked at the clock. Then you're 27 minutes less informed. Vanessa sat opposite Corinne at the kitchen table. Mara remained near the sink, though every instinct told her to take a chair between them. Arthur placed a photocopied tenant list in front of each sister. Vanessa glanced at the first page. We already have names and lease dates. What kind of work does Walter Ruiz avoid because of his back? Arthur asked. Vanessa looked up. Who has a key for Denise's apartment when she travels? Which tenant works nights and needs inspection calls after noon? Who smells gas before anybody else? Who doesn't hear the basement alarm without her hearing aids? Vanessa's expression shifted from irritation to defense. Grandma didn't put any of that in the leases. No. Some of this is private, some of it is useful. Learn the difference. He opened the oldest notebook. Mara watched Vanessa look at Arthur's unsteady hand, then at the pages he had kept for more than 2 decades. For once, she did not look away. Start again, Vanessa said. Walter Ruiz. What do we need to know? Arthur began with Walter's back and ended with the boiler. He showed Vanessa and Corinne which radiators needed shims, which valves had been replaced, and why Calder's heat could sound violent while remaining functional. He made them copy the furnace filter sizes by hand. We have phones, Vanessa said. Phones get dropped in toilets. Not often. Once is enough. He moved to Linden Place. The basement shutoff was marked in his notebook with a sketch of the storage cages. He explained that the third-floor bathroom stack had been repaired in sections over 12 years and should be inspected from 3A before anyone opened a first-floor ceiling again. Vanessa wrote faster. Corinne asked questions. At 8:30, Arthur closed the notebook. We're not done, Vanessa said. I am. We've only covered mechanical systems. You've covered what fits in one evening. When can we continue? After the walkthrough. Vanessa checked her calendar. Saturday morning? 10. We have a meeting at Calder at 9. Then you'll already be there. After they left, Mara found Arthur rubbing his right hand beneath the kitchen table. You went too long, she said. I sat in a chair. You wrote for 2 hours. I have written before. Next time I take notes. They need to. I can make copies. Arthur looked toward the notebook stacked beside him. If they don't write it, it becomes another thing somebody does for them. Mara sat opposite him. You could still talk less. That advice from you? I'll put it in writing. On Saturday, Arthur walked Calder Court slowly. He used the handrail and stopped on each landing without pretending he had meant to admire the walls. Mara came because she had agreed to handle his schedule, not because Vanessa had asked. Scott Mercer appeared in the lobby carrying a folder and a smile that vanished when he saw Arthur. We were told this meeting concerned transition closeout, Scott said. It does, Corinne replied. We're identifying everything your files don't. Scott glanced at Mara. Harbor can't be responsible for undocumented historical arrangements. Denise came down the stairs carrying 2 empty picture frames. You weren't responsible for documented requests either, she said. Scott opened his folder. Ms. Carter, both of your tickets show resolved. My radiator vent is resolved. Your man left the bedroom floor scratched, and the knocking returned because he took out Arthur's shim. Arthur looked at Vanessa. Vanessa wrote something on her pad. We'll fix the floor and replace the shim. Before I move? Yes. Denise studied her. Why? Because we damaged it. The answer seemed to surprise Denise more than an excuse would have. They inspected every common space and 4 apartments whose tenants had agreed to entry. Arthur pointed, but he did not touch. Vanessa opened access panels, photographed serial numbers, and got dust on her knees. Corinne tested smoke alarms and wrote down dates. At Linden Place, they found 2 bags of maintenance mail in a locked office cabinet. Harbor had scanned some requests and ignored others. A slow leak beneath a sink had swollen a kitchen-base cabinet. A hallway light had been out for 6 weeks. None of it was catastrophic. Together, it was expensive. Scott called them transition discrepancies. Vanessa fired him in the basement beside cage 3. Her voice shook, but she did it. The termination fee arrived Monday. So did Denise's final rent payment. Another Calder tenant declined renewal in April, explaining that he had found a quieter building with faster maintenance. A third left Linden after the latest increase. Each empty unit needed painting, cleaning, and repairs before it could be rented again. Vanessa lowered the asking rent twice, but refused to lower it to Evelyn's old number. Otherwise, the increase was pointless, she said. The empty apartment is making 0, Corinne replied. They argued in Weller's kitchen because Arthur had become the only consultant both would attend. Mara brought coffee, set Arthur's invoice beside Vanessa, and went into the front room to answer a customer call. She no longer remained between her sisters by instinct. If they wanted to fight, they could hear themselves. The roof payments arrived every 30 days. The first came from Mara's remaining savings and 2 extra hospital shifts. The second came partly from insurance and partly from the repair account. By the third, Arthur's front room had 6 active jobs on its shelves and appointments booked 3 weeks out. Mara built a real intake form. Arthur objected to the word condition because everything has one, so she changed it to existing damage. Customers signed beneath descriptions of loose joints, split veneer, missing hardware, and old repairs that might fail when dismantled. Mrs. Epps referred 3 people and demanded no commission, only that Arthur stop charging her friendship prices. Geraldine from the hospital brought a small desk. Darnell brought 2 dining chairs and refused to pay until Arthur produced a proper invoice. Calvin asked them to repair a tool chest his father had used and traded part of the price against Mara's final roof balance. No invisible favors, Mara told him. It's on paper, Calvin said. Visible as taxes. Arthur taught Mara to strip damaged finish without erasing age, to clamp square, and to stop sanding before an edge lost its history. She made mistakes. A walnut side table acquired a pale spot because she left solvent too long. Arthur made her call the owner herself. The owner said she had planned to put a lamp there. Arthur made Mara repair it anyway. His hands became less reliable, not more. He began using jigs he would once have mocked. Mara steadied pieces while he judged alignment. On bad days, he did no cutting. He answered questions, mixed stains, and sat at the work table with his hands wrapped around coffee until the shaking eased. He kept his April appointment with Dr. Patel. Mara did not ask what happened until he volunteered that they were trying a lower dose of a different medication. Any side effects? She says irritability. How will we tell? Arthur shut the appointment calendar in her face. Upstairs, the front bedroom remained unfinished after the roof closed. Mara slept in the back room beside stacked boxes and the blue settee. The new decking kept the ceiling dry. She paid for insulation and hung it with Corinne's help, but left the plaster for later. Leaving something unfinished became its own kind of discipline. The photographs survived. On evenings when the workshop phone stayed quiet, Mara sorted them on the middle room floor. Evelyn appeared young beside buildings that looked older than she did. In one picture, she stood outside Calder Court with a paint roller in one hand and Arthur beside her, holding the repaired lobby chair. Both were laughing at something beyond the frame. Lucille appeared in another photograph at a folding table in Weller's backyard, wearing a yellow blouse and pointing a serving spoon at Evelyn. Mara carried it downstairs. Arthur held the picture by its edges. What was she saying? Evelyn put raisins in potato salad. Why? She claimed it needed sweetness. What happened? Lucille threw it away. Good. Arthur smiled at the photograph. It was the first time Mara saw his face become younger without becoming happier. She was sick then? Mara asked. Not yet. He set the photograph beside the radio, not in a drawer. By June, Calder Court had 2 vacancies and a boiler repair, large enough to erase 3 months of rent. Linden was doing better because Corinne spent mornings there before opening the salon. She answered calls herself, hired Darnell when needed, and reversed the latest increase for 2 long-term tenants whose renewals had not taken effect. Vanessa called that inconsistent. Corinne called it cheaper than vacancies, They stopped managing jointly. Corinne took daily responsibility for Linden. Vanessa took Calder because she insisted its location gave it greater growth potential. Mara understood the choice. Vanessa still believed the right number could make fear obedient. It did not. She replaced kitchen counters in one empty unit before repairing a recurring drain problem. A new tenant moved in and left 6 months later after water backed into the sink twice. The management photographs looked beautiful. The loss did not. When the boiler failed again during the first cold week of autumn, Arthur identified the probable problem from Vanessa's description, but refused to go downstairs at Calder. "My hand doesn't change what stairs do to my knees," he said. Vanessa hired a licensed company. The repair was necessary, correctly done, and painfully expensive. She came to Weller Street that evening with the invoice folded in her bag. Mara was upstairs completing a nursing school readmission form. The roof had delayed it by 1 semester. The workshop income could not replace her hospital wages, but her 6% covered books if she continued taking 2 evening shifts each week. She had not told her sisters yet. Vanessa stood in the doorway looking at the form. "You're going back if they readmit me." "They will. You don't know that. You stayed awake through Grandma's hospice. You can survive paperwork." It was not quite praise and not quite apology. Mara accepted it anyway. Vanessa sat on the blue settee. The orange soda stain remained visible along one cushion. "I'm selling Calder," she said. Mara placed the form on the sewing cabinet. "Does Corinne agree?" "She says it's my decision if we divide the proceeds and she keeps Linden." "Do you want to sell?" "No." The answer came without hesitation. "I can't keep covering it," Vanessa continued. "The vacancies, boiler, insurance. I used most of what I had from the divorce. I thought the building would start paying me back. Buildings don't know when you're owed. You sound like Arthur. I charge less." Vanessa looked around the room. Exposed plaster near the window, repaired trim, labeled boxes of photographs. "You could take over Calder." "No, I don't mean for free. You and Arthur could manage it. We could restructure ownership. You could buy into my half over time." "With what money?" "The house has equity now that the roof is repaired." Mara stared at her. Vanessa raised both hands. "I'm suggesting an option. You're suggesting I risk this house to save the building you got instead. When you put it that way, how else is there to put it?" Vanessa stood. "I came here before listing it because I thought maybe you wanted part of Grandma's real estate. I have part. You have a house that barely pays its own bills. I know what I have, and I know what I'm losing." The words sharpened into anger, then cracked. Vanessa sat again. "I can't lose another home," she said. "Calder isn't your home. It was supposed to be the thing nobody could take. No one is taking it. It costs more than you can pay. That feels the same." Mara sat beside her, leaving space between them. "I can't buy you out," she said. "I won't borrow against Weller, and Arthur isn't going back to keeping the building alive, so you never have to feel scared." Vanessa wiped beneath one eye with the heel of her hand. "I know. You can sell it without making that proof you failed." "That sounds like something you learned very recently. It was expensive." Vanessa laughed through her nose. Calder sold in November to a local owner who already managed 2 nearby buildings. The price covered its debts and left Vanessa with less than she had imagined at the will meeting, though more than Mara had ever held at once. The new owner retained the remaining tenants and kept the repaired lobby chair in place. On the final day, Vanessa sat in that chair while the last paperwork was handled upstairs. Mara found her there with a cardboard box containing Evelyn's spare coffee cups, a bundle of keys that no longer opened anything she owned, and the silver scarf Denise had reclaimed, washed, and returned. "I thought this was what Grandma wanted me to have," Vanessa said. "The chair? All of it." Mara leaned against the mailboxes. "Maybe it was. I ruined it. You repaired things too." "After I ignored them." "Yes." Vanessa looked up. "You don't make apologies easy. I'm trying not to make them fake." The front door opened, bringing in cold air. Vanessa held the scarf tighter. "When Grandma got sick, I knew," she said. "Before you told us how bad it was, I knew enough." Mara said nothing. "I kept waiting for someone to force me to come," Vanessa continued. "You, Corinne, the doctor, Grandma. Then I could be angry about being forced instead of admitting I was afraid." The brass mailboxes blurred in Mara's vision. "You cared for her," Vanessa said. "We protected ourselves from watching." Then we made what you did sound small, because otherwise we had to know what we didn't do. Mara looked at the chair Arthur had repaired, the faint line still visible along its arm. I needed you, she said. I know. No, I need you to hear it. I needed one night. Vanessa closed her eyes. When she opened them, she did not defend herself. I know, she said again, and I didn't come. Mara waited for the familiar explanation to follow. The meeting, the fear, the canceled morning. Eric. Some reason Vanessa's absence had hurt Vanessa too. None came. Vanessa sat with both hands wrapped around Denise's silver scarf. Outside, a truck backed into a loading space with 3 sharp beeps. Somewhere upstairs, a man laughed and a door closed. I don't know what to do with that yet, Mara said. You don't have to do anything. Usually when people apologize to me, there's an assignment hidden in it. I know. You're doing it again. Vanessa gave a tired smile. Sorry. That one had an assignment? Then I withdraw it. Mara sat on the radiator across from her. The heat clicked beneath her legs. I wanted you to feel guilty, she admitted. Not just know you should. I wanted you to hurt enough that it looked like mine. Did it work? Sometimes. Vanessa nodded, accepting that too. The new owner's footsteps sounded on the stairs. Their time in the lobby was ending. Vanessa stood and lifted the box of coffee cups. Can you take the keys? She asked. They're not mine. I know. I just don't want to carry them. Mara held out her hand. The ring of keys was heavier than it looked. Calder's front door, boiler room, vacant apartments, storage cages. Years of entry reduced to pieces of metal that would be relabeled by someone else. Vanessa did not ask Mara to make the loss mean something good. At the office upstairs, she handed over the keys herself. Mara withdrew the Weller Street listing that afternoon. Lisa answered with no surprise. Do you want me to mark it temporarily off-market? No. Withdraw it. Then I will. Did you know I'd keep it? I knew you stopped asking what it could sell for and started asking what things cost to repair. That sounds expensive. It generally is. Mara thanked her and closed the listing tab on her phone. The house did not change. The front bedroom still needed a ceiling. One upstairs window leaked cold air around the frame. The furnace rattled at startup, and the kitchen floor continued leaning toward Arthur's stove, as if interested in dinner. Ownership did not become wise because Mara had chosen it. She still woke some nights convinced she had sacrificed too much. She still calculated what the roof money might have done inside a tuition account. On those mornings, she did not force herself to feel grateful. She went downstairs, made coffee badly, and looked at the actual numbers. The workshop paid the final roof installment in January. Calvin marked the invoice paid and drew a tiny roof beneath his signature. Arthur objected. Makes you look unserious. I stood outside in sleet while your house tried to eat itself, Calvin said. I've earned whimsy. It didn't try to eat itself. It dropped a ceiling on the owner. Mara moved. Because I'm quick, Mara said. Because I pulled you, Arthur replied. Calvin tucked his receipt book into his coat. This is a touching family story. I'm leaving before somebody admits it. After he left, Mara taped the paid invoice inside the kitchen cabinet beside the calendar. Arthur moved it because it was crooked. Her nursing school readmission came by email on a Tuesday while she was pricing a mahogany table repair. She read the first line 3 times. Arthur was sanding across the room with both hands on a block held by a guide. Bad news? They let me back in. He stopped. Part-time, she said. Evening clinicals next term. I'll have to cut one hospital shift, and you'll need to answer the workshop phone Tuesdays. No? Then customers can speak to your voicemail. He considered the full voicemail. I'll answer. That's very generous. I'm protecting the business. Of course. Arthur returned to sanding. After several strokes, he said, Evelyn would be pleased. Mara waited for the old pressure to settle on her shoulders. It did not. I'm pleased, she said. Arthur nodded. Better. Corinne kept Linden Place. She removed Harbor's logo from the office door, returned to handwritten maintenance logs backed up on her computer, and learned enough about the systems to know when she needed Darnell, rather than a general handyman. Arthur charged for 3 more consultations, then told her she had begun asking questions she could answer herself. It was the nicest thing he ever said to her. She kept rent stable through the next renewal cycle. The empty units filled slowly, mostly through referrals from existing tenants. The building did not become an empire. It paid its bills, funded a repair reserve, and left Corinne with a modest monthly amount she refused to describe as passive. There's nothing passive about a woman calling you at midnight because her faucet sounds judgmental, she told Mara. Vanessa used part of the Calder proceeds to pay what she owed from the divorce and save the rest. She enrolled again in the real estate licensing course, then quit halfway through. When Mara asked why, Vanessa said, "I don't actually like buildings. I liked what I thought they could promise." She took an operations job with a medical supply company. The salary was ordinary. She complained about spreadsheets and one colleague who microwaved fish. For the first few months, she arrived at Weller only when invited and left too early. Then she began staying 5 minutes longer. She helped Mara install shelves in the middle room, though she held the level backward until Arthur corrected her. She brought the wrong screws, returned them, and came back with the right ones. When Mara said thank you, Vanessa did not turn the gratitude into a discussion of whether they were all right. They were not all right. They were present. The front bedroom ceiling went up in sections. Mara paid a plasterer for the part above the damaged rafters and learned to finish the safer areas herself. Corinne rolled the paint. Vanessa sanded trim. Arthur supervised until all three sisters told him to sit down, at which point he sat and supervised more loudly. Mara chose warm white instead of restoring the old gray. She left one small square of Evelyn's pale yellow exposed inside the closet. Not everything inherited needed to remain visible. The blue settee moved beneath the front window. Mara tried removing the orange soda stain and made it worse. "I told you it was Vanessa," she said when her sisters saw it. "You confessed at Grandma's 70th birthday," Corinne replied. "She knew?" Vanessa asked. "Everybody knew. I accepted years of false blame." "You enjoyed the attention," Mara said. Vanessa threw a cushion at her. On the first anniversary of Evelyn's death, no one suggested a formal memorial. Mara worked an early shift. Corinne went to Linden. Vanessa sent a message at 7 in the morning that said only, "Thinking about her." Mara answered, "Me too." That evening, Arthur placed Evelyn and Lucille's photograph beside the repaired radio. He made stew. Mara studied drug calculations at his kitchen table while the pipes clicked overhead. Grief did not ask to be organized. It sat with them, less demanding than before. The workshop acquired a small painted sign because customers kept walking past the house. Mara designed it on her phone. Arthur rejected 4 fonts and all colors except dark green. Bell Repair. Restoration, it read. Below, in smaller letters, by appointment. "You left your name off," Arthur said. "I don't repair anything unsupervised. You do intake, accounts, scheduling, finishing, pickup, and half the sanding. Do you want Bennett on it?" "No." "Sign's too small," she added. "Bennett beneath Bell." Arthur pretended not to notice for 2 days. On the 3rd, he straightened the sign. His rent remained $575 because the lease remained the lease. He paid on the 1st of each month, usually by check, though Mara told him electronic payment would be easier. For whom? Me. Then no. Workshop earnings went into a separate account. They paid for supplies, utilities used by the business, and then labor. Arthur's share gave him enough to replace tools he had been repairing beyond reason. Mara's share paid for textbooks and, eventually, a used silver Honda with a passenger door that opened from both sides. Tasha inspected the car and declared it insufficiently labeled. In spring, Denise called Mara. The new owner at Calder was replacing the lobby furniture with a bench and 2 commercial chairs. He had asked whether anyone wanted Evelyn's old wooden chair before it was removed. Mara drove there that afternoon. The chair stood where it always had, near the radiator. Its repaired arm remained solid. Denise met her in the lobby carrying a grocery bag. "I told him it had family," she said. "It had tenants. Same thing if you wait long enough." Mara lifted the chair. "Arthur carried this 11 blocks. He complained all the way. You saw him? Everybody saw him. Man carried a chair down North Avenue like he was rescuing a relative." The chair rode home in the back of Mara's Honda, one leg protruding between the front seats just as it had in Tasha's car. Arthur looked at it on the Weller sidewalk. They replaced it already? Apparently, consistent systems require matching lobby furniture. He examined the repaired joint. Held. 17 years and counting. Good glue. They put it at the head of the upstairs dining table Corinne had found secondhand and Arthur had repaired. Nobody called it Evelyn's chair, but nobody else sat in it. The first family dinner in the finished upstairs rooms was held on a wet Sunday in October. Finished was generous. The bathroom door still stuck. One baseboard remained unpainted. The backlight had a new bulb, but worked only when the mystery switch was pressed upward with conviction. Corinne brought roast chicken, macaroni, and cheese, and a bakery pie she transferred to her own dish before arriving. Tasha brought salad and labels from Mara's spice jars. Darnell brought wine. Calvin brought rolls and began explaining why grocery store bread had declined until Arthur asked him to leave. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes late and empty-handed. "I stopped at 3 places," she said from the doorway. "Everything looked wrong." Mara took her coat. "You could have brought ice." "I forgot ice." "There's ice." Then I succeeded. Arthur sat in the repaired chair. Lucille and Evelyn's photograph rested on the sideboard behind him. Corinne objected to how Mara carved the chicken. Darnell objected to Corinne's objection. Vanessa laughed with her mouth full and almost choked. No one gave a speech. After dinner, Mara began stacking plates out of habit. Corinne took them from her. "You cooked last night for Arthur. He made stew. You cut carrots. Under supervision. Go study. I can help." "We know," Vanessa said. The words carried enough history to quiet the room. Vanessa picked up the serving dish. "You don't have to." Mara looked at her sisters, one at the sink and one waiting beside it. Arthur was arguing with Tasha about whether the leftover labels could be applied to jars he had used unlabeled for 30 years. Rain tapped against the new roof. No buckets waited beneath it. Mara went upstairs to her desk and opened her nursing book. Through the floor came running water, dishes touching, Corinne's laugh, Vanessa asking where the towels belonged, and Arthur telling her she had lived long enough to recognize a drawer. The house went on without Mara holding every piece in place. She turned the page and let it.